Chapter 520. On the first day after the new year, the Fergus family was bustling with activity. The feudal nobles and some familiar nobles came to visit one after another. On the square in front of the Fergus family's main entrance, luxurious carriages were competing with each other. Earl Fergus and Bernal had been busy since the morning. Even Grey, who usually did not participate in such matters, was pulled in as a strong man. There were too many people. Earl Fergus and Bernal were too busy. When some important families came to visit, it would be disrespectful if the family head or the heir of the family did not receive them personally. However, Grey was different. As a Count of the Purple Moon Kingdom, his status in the Purple Moon Kingdom was not inferior to that of a duke's family patriarch. Naturally, it would not be rude for him to receive these people, and from the flattered expressions on the faces of the families that were received, one could see this. It was not until the afternoon that the hustle and bustle slowed down slightly. With the support of a strong body, Grey was not physically tired, but mentally tired. He was about to find a place to rest when he bumped into Bernal. Beside him was a beautiful woman. The woman was wearing a red winter dress with black pantyhose under the dress, revealing her long and slender legs. Seeing Grey, Bernal introduced her. "Miss L, this is my third brother, Grey. Grey, this is Miss L from the Dawn Chamber of Commerce." "Hello." Both of them bowed to each other. Grey had heard of the Dawn Chamber of Commerce. When the Fergus family was in trouble due to the suppression of the Clover Chamber of Commerce, the first Chamber of Commerce to trade with the Fergus family was this Chamber of Commerce. Although there was some element of opportunism, and the timing was chosen after he deterred the Nahum family, the other party's price was reasonable. To this day, the Fergus family was still in the medicinal business with this Chamber of Commerce, and was the Fergus family's biggest business partner. Looking at the other party's face, Grey felt vaguely familiar and could not help but ask, "Miss L, have we met before?" "We have indeed met once. Although Lord Grey doesn't really remember me, I still remember how domineering Lord Grey was when he blocked the Shamrock Chamber of Commerce's headquarters by himself." El Leandre covered her mouth and smiled elegantly. "I hope I didn't scare you." Grey smiled and didn't feel embarrassed. After all, his target at that time was the Shamrock Chamber of Commerce. He didn't have the leisure to pay attention to other things. In the evening, after dinner, whoosh, using spatial teleportation, Grey appeared in Red Leaf Forest with Barnett Naeem and flew towards the spot where the palace had once appeared. After flying for more than 10 minutes, they arrived at a wasteland covered in snow. The wasteland was surrounded by towering boulders, ranging from a few tons to hundreds of tons. In the center of the wasteland, there was a large open space without any boulders. That was where the mysterious palace had once appeared, but the mysterious palace had not appeared yet. Snow was drifting outside, and the weather was quite cold. Grey and Barnett Naeem set up a tent on a boulder several meters high, waiting for the palace to appear. With their physique, they were naturally not afraid of the cold, but the sky outside was drifting with snow. Grey didn't want to become a snowman. Time passed slowly. Just when Grey almost thought that his guess was wrong and that the palace's appearance was not measured in years, a change occurred. In the open space in the center of the palace, there was a white light first, then slowly, a palace-shaped building slowly rose. Finally, a whole palace emitting hazy white light appeared. This was a rugged and unadorned building. The buildings inside were all extremely tall. Although they looked crude, they gave off a majestic feeling. Compared to the exquisite beauty of the buildings of the Empire, this building paid more attention to the three-dimensional sense of the whole. It was for this reason that Grey judged that this building was not an Empire's building, but left by another force. Swish, swish, swish. With the palace as the center, there was a vast expanse of white all around. Hundreds of thousands of spirits gathered. Even though he had already seen it once, Grey could not help but feel shocked. He was amazed by the number of spirits and the great effort of the force that had set up this runic mechanism. Especially now that he knew that this place was only one of the 4 places, the shock was even more intense. As the spirits came one after another, the white light above the white building became more and more intense. A few hours later, hundreds of thousands of spirits had gathered in the building. By now, there were fewer and fewer spirits gathered, and the white light of the white building became more and more intense. Pop! Suddenly, on the surface of the white building, a large number of golden patterns appeared. Some were like ferocious beasts, and some were like ferocious birds. They bobbed up and down on the surface of the building, rippling with a strange golden light. The golden patterns flashed rapidly, and the frequency increased. When it reached a certain point, it suddenly stopped and completely floated on the surface of the building, turning into a part of the building's decoration. And at this time, the gathering of spirits had stopped. "We can go in." Having experienced it once, Gray naturally understood that this meant that the building was completely stable and could be entered. He led Barnett Neem through the huge arch passage and walked inside, heading straight for the altar in the middle of the building that was 100 meters tall. "I wonder if I can fly up." Looking at this majestic altar, Gray's heart stirred slightly. A pair of greenish-black wings appeared on his back, and he attempted to fly directly to the altar without going through the steps. But just as he flew close to the altar, his body suddenly plummeted. No matter how he flapped his wings, he could not stabilize his body and could not stop falling. It was as if the area around the altar was a no-fly zone. Even if he had wings, he could not fly here. Pung! With a muffled sound, Gray successfully landed on the ground without being injured. With his current physical fitness, even if he fell from 100 meters, it would be difficult for him to be injured. "It seems that I can only climb up one step at a time." Gray led Barnett Noem up the steps. The gravity that he had felt once before suddenly appeared, and as he climbed up, it became heavier and heavier. 100 steps, 200 steps, 300 steps, 400 steps. Very easily, Gray climbed to the limit of 400 steps that he had reached back then. Here, apart from his slightly heavy breathing, he did not even sweat. Compared to back then, his current strength was much stronger. If he were to fight with himself back then, he estimated that just one blow would be enough to kill dozens of his former self. 500 steps, 600 steps. After climbing to the 600th step, Gray finally felt some pressure. 700 steps. After climbing to the 700th step, Gray felt as if he was carrying a mountain on his back. Even with his strength, he could not help but sweat. 800 steps, 900 steps. As he continued to climb, the gravity continued to increase. When he climbed to the 900th step, Gray felt that he had reached his limit. His whole body seemed to be glued to the steps, and he could no longer lift it. He had already used metallization on himself. Although in terms of physical strength, he could still withstand heavier pressure, but his strength was no longer enough to support him climbing up. Gray looked at Barnett Neem beside him. His forehead was also covered in sweat, and he also felt the pressure, but it was obvious that he had not reached his limit. "Go up and see if that sword has been repaired," Gray ordered Barnett Neem. "Yes, my lord," Barnett Neem replied and climbed up. 910 steps, 920 steps, 930 steps. Even as a king, Barnett Neem's climbing speed had become very slow. Under Gray's gaze, he slowly climbed up, his clothes completely drenched in sweat. However, although the speed at which they were climbing wasn't fast, they were still climbing slowly and steadily towards the top of the altar. 999 steps. Finally, he stood on the 999th step, standing only one step away from the top of the altar. He lifted his right foot, his body trembling slightly, and placed it on the 1000th step. His face was red, and with a burst of strength, he finally stood on the 1000th step. He went up. Gray breathed a sigh of relief. His initial estimation was not wrong. As long as he could reach King, he would be able to climb to the top of the altar. "How is it? Has it been repaired?" He hurriedly asked the question he was most concerned about. Soon, he received a slightly panting answer from Barnett Neem. "The blade is in good condition. I can't see any damage." Chapter 5:21. The body of the sword is intact. Hearing this, Gray could not help but feel a burst of excitement. How high would the value of a weapon that had been repaired and was suspected to have belonged to a god be? If he could get his hands on this weapon and use it in battle, To what extent would his battle prowess be raised? See if you can remove the sword. Forcefully suppressing the excitement in his heart, Gray instructed Barnet Naim. Yes, my lord, Barnet Naim replied, and his figure disappeared from the edge of the altar. Judging from the sound of his footsteps, he should be walking towards the center of the altar. Pung! Suddenly, a soft sound rang out. Although the sound was not too loud, it was clearly audible in this silent night. What's going on? Gray hurriedly asked. My lord, there's an invisible barrier that protects the sword. Barnet Naim replied. An invisible barrier? There's actually an invisible barrier. It's really not easy to get this sword. Gray raised his eyebrows slightly. After the initial excitement, he gradually calmed down, and he thought of some problems that he had not thought of before. The faction that had set up the super repair runes had put in so much effort to repair this weapon that was suspected to have been used by a god. They certainly did not wish for the repaired weapon to fall into the hands of other factions. For this reason, they must have left some defensive measures. Obviously, this invisible barrier must have been left behind by this faction to prevent the weapon that was suspected to have been used by a god from falling into the hands of others. Try and see if you can break it, Gray ordered. Following Gray's order, a sword-shaped silver weapon appeared in Barnet Naim's hand. The silver weapon was shrouded in green light, and it exploded with the strongest destructive power, quickly slashing at the invisible barrier. Pung! A thunderous explosion rang out, and the entire battle platform trembled. The explosive air swept out in all directions like a cannonball. Gray, who was standing on the 900th step, was almost blown away. One could imagine the power of Barnet Naim's attack. Pung, pung, pung. And this attack did not stop. Several consecutive explosions rang out. Clearly, the attack just now had not been able to break the invisible barrier. Barnet Naim was attacking continuously. After slashing dozens of times, the commotion came to a stop as Barnet Naim's voice sounded. My lord, I can't break the invisible barrier with my current strength. I've slashed it dozens of times, but it hasn't been damaged at all. Gray frowned. His intuition told him that it would be extremely difficult to obtain this sword. However, he was truly unwilling to give up just like that. After some thought, he instructed, see if you can find the control hub. In the end, there was none. Except for the invisible barrier, the entire altar was too clean. There was nothing similar to a control hub. He didn't know how the force that left this super large rune array would open it when he came to take it. He then tried to see if he could use other methods to open the invisible barrier. After a busy night of trying all sorts of methods, the palace disappeared at dawn. Gray was still unable to break through the invisible barrier and obtain the sword. As expected, it won't work. Gray shook his head helplessly. When the palace was first built, they had already considered the possibility of outsiders discovering the palace. They had set up targeted defenses. It was impossible for outsiders to break through the barrier and take the sword inside. I'm afraid it'll only be possible if it's at least magic light level. From the performance of the invisible barrier after Barnet Naim's attack, Gray estimated that to break through this layer of invisible barrier, one would need at least magic light level combat power. Magic light level again? Suddenly, Gray was stunned. There was a sudden clap of thunder in his mind. Breaking through the world's barrier required at least magic light level combat power. Now, breaking through the invisible barrier also required at least magic light level combat power. However, in the past 1,000 years, no one in the 4 great kingdoms had successfully broken through to magic light level. Was it because the king-level experts born in the 4 great kingdoms in the past 1,000 years had poor aptitudes? Definitely not. King-level experts who could cultivate to the 3rd evolution had absolutely no problems in terms of aptitudes. Although there was a bloodline problem, it was definitely not the main reason. At least in his opinion, the king-level expert of the Flame Kingdom, Blair Blaze, who had evolved to the peak of the 3rd evolution, had definitely raised his bloodline to the magic light level. However, he was still unable to break through to become a magic light level expert. It could be seen that the main reason was definitely not his bloodline. This world seemed to have a shackle that prevented the people of this world from becoming a magic light level expert. Not being able to produce a magic light level expert definitely has a lot to do with the super large runic matrix. 1,000 years ago, there were magic light level experts during the Empire's era. After the Empire disappeared, there were no more magic light level experts born. Previously, he had guessed that it might be because of this super large runic matrix, and now he was even more certain of this guess. The appearance of a magic light level expert could break the invisible barrier and steal a weapon that was suspected to have been used by a god. Even if the magic weapon could not be taken away, they could still break the world barrier and leave this world, causing the news to leak out and attract even more experts. Therefore, the faction that had laid down the super large runic matrix had used some method to prevent the birth of a magic light level expert. Although this sounded extremely strange, and it was unclear how the other party had done it, it was a highly probable guess under the current circumstances. Moreover, the island in the spatial rift was able to prohibit the use of magic weapons. It was not impossible to prevent people from reaching the magic light level. I don't know if the faction that left this super large runic matrix has descended to this world. Gray suddenly felt a strong sense of unease in his heart. The magic weapon of unknown level had already been repaired. Logically speaking, the faction that had left this super large runic matrix would definitely descend to this world and retrieve the magic weapon of unknown level. If the other party had descended to this world only to retrieve the magic weapon of unknown level, then it would be fine. However, he was afraid that the other party would treat the four great kingdoms like they had treated the Empire 1,000 years ago. If that was really the case, it would be a disaster for the four great kingdoms. I have to make a trip to the imperial capital and report to the royal family. Previously, Gray had intended to try and see if he could obtain the weapon that was suspected to have belonged to a god. However, now that he knew that the magic weapon could not be obtained by a king-level expert, there was no need to hide it anymore. Although all signs indicated that the faction was extremely terrifying, and even if the royal family knew about it and took precautions, the outcome would not change when faced with that faction. They would still be powerless to resist. However, at least it was better than not taking any precautions at all. With precautions, they could also prepare for the worst. They could leave some backup plans and hide their disciples with potential to prevent the entire faction from being uprooted. That day, Gray used spatial teleportation to reach the imperial capital. He found Francis and Sophia and told them about the mysterious palace. Did you discover it? Hearing Gray mention the mysterious palace, Francis and Sophia did not seem surprised. The royal family already knows? Gray looked at the two in surprise. Yes, 300 years ago, a king-level expert of the royal family accidentally discovered that palace and tried to obtain the sword, but he found that he could not move it at all. Since then, the royal family has gone to investigate every few years. When they went to investigate last year, they discovered that the sword had been repaired. Francis nodded. After discovering that the sword had been repaired, the royal family has been on the lookout for the arrival of external factions. However, so far, they have not discovered any traces of external factions. It's not that there isn't any. There is one suspect, but this faction's performance is too unsatisfactory. It doesn't seem like a faction that could set up such a super large runic matrix. Sophia continued. Is it the fifth faction? Gray's heart moved as he asked. Yes. At first, we did suspect that the fifth faction was the faction that set up the super large runic matrix. However, as we investigated, we found that although the members of this faction have reached king level, their evolution level is not high. It doesn't seem like a faction that could set up such a large runic matrix. Sophia nodded. It doesn't seem like it. Gray also nodded in agreement. The faction that set up the super large runic matrix was very likely the faction that destroyed the Empire. Even the Empire that had a magic light expert could be destroyed. One could only imagine how powerful this faction was. Although the fifth faction's appearance was very strange, and there was no news about them before, their strength was like heaven and earth compared to that faction. Not only did they not have a magic light expert, they did not even have a thrice-evolved king-level expert. It was hard to imagine that such a faction could be related to the faction that destroyed the Empire. After leaving the palace, Gray returned to Fergus Castle on the same day. The Fergus family was still receiving visitors. The Fergus Castle was bustling with noise and excitement. The visiting nobles and the Fergus family were drinking hot milk tea, chatting, and laughing. Seeing such an atmosphere, Gray could not help but relax and blend in. Although danger could come at any time, or it had already come and was just lurking, there was only one thing that he could do now, other than leaving a backup plan. That was to improve his strength and strive to have the strength to protect himself and his close friends when danger broke out. After a few lively days, one day, Gray received a call from the third-level, desolate-level elder who disguised himself as a businessman. Using spatial transmission, he appeared in the secret room of the caravan's residence. After taking control of this faction, this was the first time he had come to this faction's residence. "What's the matter?" In the secret room, the chubby elder was already waiting respectfully. Gray asked, "Sir, the caravan has inquired about the tomb of the kings. I thought you would be interested, so I contacted you." The chubby elder bowed slightly and said respectfully, Chapter 522, A King's Tomb. Gray was quite surprised. It had only been a little over a year, and yet another king's tomb had appeared. This was a very rare occurrence in the Purple Moon Kingdom's history. However, when he thought about the various changes that had occurred recently, he did not find this strange. "Well done." Gray nodded with satisfaction. The king's tomb was indeed something he was very interested in. After asking about the location, Gray left the caravan station. He used the power of blood to form a pair of black wings and rushed towards the king's tomb. The caravan was not the only one who had heard the news. Many other forces had also received the news. He had to hurry over as soon as possible to avoid being beaten to it. After flying for an hour, Gray flew into a forest. The king's tomb was in this forest. It was not a very large forest, only covering an area of 2 or 3 miles. The reason why the king's tomb had not been discovered before seemed to be because of the rune mechanism's camouflage effect. However, this effect had disappeared for some reason. "Someone has arrived before me." Because it was winter, the road and ground were covered in snow. Along the way, Gray found many footprints, all of which were heading towards this forest. Obviously, someone had arrived before him. Sure enough, when he arrived at the forest where the king's tomb was suspected to be, he immediately saw many people. These people were scattered, confronting each other and guarding against each other. They were obviously from different forces. Fortunately, these people were not able to enter the king's tomb. The reason for this was that he had already seen the king's tomb, and he had already seen that there were no signs of the tomb being broken. In the middle of an open space, a huge tomb stood a few meters tall, like a small hill. The huge tomb and the surrounding ground were all green. It looked like it was piled up and paved with green stones, but in fact it was not. There was a jade-like luster on the green stone. This was not ordinary green stone, but wind jade. This was a type of gemstone that had a strong affinity with wind attribute runes. It was a precious rune material, and its value was no less than magic coins of the same size. The tomb and even the surrounding ground were paved with this kind of wind jade. The owner of the tomb was extraordinarily rich. Based on this alone, Gray could already be sure that this was the tomb of a king-level powerhouse. Only a king-level powerhouse could be so rich to build a tomb with wind jade. Someone else is coming, but this time it's only one person. Gray's arrival immediately attracted the attention of the other forces that had arrived first. They could not help but look at Gray. He flew here. Looks like he's not weak. The way Gray descended from the sky with wings on his back made the other forces understand that Gray's strength was definitely not weak. Out of caution, the few forces that arrived first all watched. For a moment, the scene was silent. No one actually made a sound. Since these forces didn't provoke him, Gray naturally wouldn't provoke them either. He walked straight towards the tomb. This guy's going to suffer. There's going to be a good show. Some factions discussed in low voices, but they didn't step forward to stop them. The mechanisms of the Tomb of the Kings weren't that easy to break. Since they were the first to arrive, it was naturally impossible for them to not test the waters. Their forces had sent an elder of the barbarian blood warriors to test the waters, but he had suffered a great loss. If he had not reacted quickly, it was very likely that he would have died under the runic mechanisms in the tomb. Is it him? There were also some factions that stared at Gray's back with a grave expression. They had never seen Gray before, but they had heard of Gray's appearance and characteristics. They had already guessed Gray's identity. Pa pa pa. Gray stepped into the area, paved with wind jade. In an instant, it was as if something had come alive. On the ground and on the tomb, numerous black lines appeared. They were densely packed, like countless moving ants. It made one's scalp tingle. Swish! A green wind blade appeared, tearing through the air and slashing towards Gray. Gray punched out, instantly shattering the green wind blade. However, this was just the beginning. Swish, swish, swish. More wind blades appeared, all of them slashing towards Gray. Clang, clang, clang. Having judged that these wind blades were not a threat, Gray simply didn't bother to block them and allowed them to slash his body. The sound of metal clashing continued. Other than his clothes being torn, Gray didn't have any injuries on his body. Just like that, he braved the wind blades. His speed wasn't fast, but he slowly and firmly walked towards the tomb. It's really him. Seeing this scene, the factions that were still guessing about Gray's identity immediately confirmed it. There was no other person with black hair and blue eyes who had such powerful strength in the entire Purple Moon Kingdom. He actually withstood the wind blade's attack with just his physical body. How strong is his physical body? Some powers were shocked, their faces filled with disbelief. His appearance was so young, yet he possessed such powerful strength. Could it be that the other party was an expert of the older generation who appeared young? Gray Fergus, he's Gray Fergus. Some factions suddenly remembered Gray's identity and couldn't help but feel lucky that they didn't intercept him and clash with him. Otherwise, they would be in trouble. Moving forward against the wind blades, Gray soon approached the tomb. At this time, the wind blades attacking him became stronger. Whoosh! A wind blade that was only a meter long, but extremely solid, as if it was polished from wind jade, slashed towards Gray. Clang! This was an attack that had reached the 3rd level of the Desolate level. Fortunately, Gray's metallized defense had reached the peak of the 1st level of the King level, so he was able to block this attack. Whoosh! 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 More and more wind blades like this attacked. Each of them was only 1 to 2 meters long, but they were extremely solid, as if they were made of wind jade. Clang! 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 Gray braved these wind blades that were enough to make the desolate blood warrior's hair stand on end and walk towards the huge tomb. Even if a king was already dead, they couldn't be disturbed. Therefore, their tombs were usually built in secret places with extremely powerful rune mechanisms. If there was no one who knew how to break the rune mechanisms in this tomb, even a 3rd-level Desolate level expert would have a hard time, unless they had a silver weapon. Now that he thought about it, it was fortunate that the Addison family had invited a rune master to enter the tomb. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to enter. Thump, thump, thump. Braving the wind blades, Gray knocked on the huge bluestone wall of the tomb, searching for the entrance by the sound. Soon, he found the location of the entrance. With his hand wrapped in black mist, Gray punched towards the location. Boom! The tomb and its surroundings shook violently. The strong wind from the explosion even caused people from the nearby factions to tumble out like gourds. Under Gray's punch, a clear fist imprint appeared on the wall of the tomb. Traces of cracks spread out, but the tomb did not break. There were black lines on the wall. It was these black lines that reinforced the wall. Quite sturdy. Gray didn't care. He waved his left and right hands, smashing the wall. Boom, boom, boom. After smashing more than 10 times, with a cracking sound, the wall shattered and collapsed. An entrance large enough for one person to pass through appeared, and Gray strode in. He successfully entered, seeing Gray disappear into the tomb. The people from the other factions were full of envy. They wanted to follow him, but they did not dare. One reason was that they were afraid of provoking Gray. Another reason was that the wind blades outside blocked their path. They could not get close at all. They did not have a defense as strong as Gray's. Pung, pung, pung. At this moment, they suddenly saw a figure quickly descend from the sky. A king-level powerhouse. Everyone was shocked. The way the other party rushed through the air was using the void as a staircase. This was clearly the mark of a king-level powerhouse. There was a staircase at the entrance. Following the staircase, Gray entered the tomb. With his night vision, he could clearly see the situation around him. He was at the beginning of a passage. The passage curved downwards. Obviously, the tomb was deep underground. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Gray followed the passageway forward. Along the way, all kinds of rune mechanisms attacked him one after another. Crimson flames, blue lightning, and hazy ice. However, Gray relied on his strong defense to block them all. He easily passed through. After going down a few dozen meters, Gray appeared in a room. The path here had been cut off. This should be the final tomb. Rather than calling it a tomb, it was better to call it a reception room. The furnishings in the room were completely in the style of a noble's reception room. There was no coffin, but Gray was sure this was a tomb. He had already seen what a tomb should have. A purple flame appeared and floated in front of Gray. The entire tomb became clearer in front of Gray. Although he could see with his infrared perception, it was not as clear as with his eyes. In front of him, facing the direction Gray had come from, there was a skeleton sitting on a metal throne. Although the skeleton's clothes had decayed, they did not fall off. The skeleton's head and hands were exposed. They were jade-like and emitted a faint pressure. The skeleton of a king-level powerhouse. Through the pressure, Gray determined that it was the ribs of a king-level powerhouse. He walked forward and quickly noticed a pouch with golden patterns on a man's waist. A rune space bag. Gray, who was very familiar with these patterns, immediately determined that it was a rune space bag. He took the rune space bag and checked the skeleton's body. After confirming that there was nothing else, Gray sent a trace of blood energy into the golden patterns. He was ready to check the contents of the rune space bag. Whoosh! At that moment, he suddenly heard the sound of a mechanism being activated. He turned around and saw a figure rushing into the room with the rune mechanism. Chapter 5:23. It's you. Gray looked at the newcomer in surprise. It was a black-haired young woman with a beautiful face and an eye-catching mole at the corner of her mouth. She was the masked woman who had fought with him for the fog crystal ball last time. However, she was no longer wearing a mask. It was probably because her face had been exposed and there was no need to hide her identity. So she had given up the mask. Gray Fergus. Seeing Gray, the black-haired young woman immediately gnashed her teeth in hatred. Her face was full of hatred as she gnashed her teeth. Not only had Gray snatched the fog crystal ball last time, but her identity had also been exposed because of Gray. She was now wanted by the Purple Moon Kingdom. Thanks to this, she had been hiding from place to place. Even so, she was still discovered by spies from the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family, and was pursued by the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. Whoosh! The resentment that the woman had accumulated during this period of time suddenly exploded, and a sharp golden blade appeared in front of her, swiftly slashing towards Gray. Dong! Gray did not dare to be careless. A king-claw beast appeared in front of him. Its body was metallized, and its 2-meter-long sharp claws slapped at the golden blade. Clang! The terrifying sound of metal clashing rang out, and the entire tomb trembled. Dust rustled and fell. Fortunately, the entire tomb had been reinforced by the rune mechanism. Otherwise, the previous attack would have been enough to collapse the tomb. Dong, dong, dong. After the attack, the king claw beast's 10-meter-long body retreated. However, the golden blade continued to move forward and slash toward Gray. Although it was a physical king-level blood beast, its combat power was not weaker than a king-level blood beast. However, it was not as strong as a magical weapon. Whoosh! As the golden blade slashed down, Gray grasped the blood-red spear in his hand and pierced through it. Clang! The golden blade was blocked and shot back. Even without the enhancement of the blood-red spear, Gray had already blocked this attack. After swallowing the blood of the Purple Flame King Beast and obtaining the bloodline of the Purple Flame King Beast, Gray's triple hybrid ability was infinitely close to king level. It was enough to block the aftershock. Dong, dong, dong. The King Claw Beast which had regained its strength, pounced on the woman. At the same time, Stanley Grinton and the King Claw beast appeared and pounced on the woman. The tomb was huge, so no matter if it was the King Claw beast or the King Kong beast, they were not trapped in such a space. Of course, the limited space in the tomb made it difficult to move. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The golden blade returned to the woman's side and emitted numerous golden phantoms to attack the woman and the two beasts. The woman and the two beasts were immediately blocked by the violent attacks of the golden phantoms, and the sound of metal clashing could be heard from time to time. After one man and two beasts, Gray took out the dagger that had been tied to his leg and stabbed it into the ground. One by one, the ghosts dove into the ground. Gray did not expect the man and the two beasts to be able to contend with the woman. He had fought with the woman before, and he knew very well how strong her defense was. The attacks of the man and the two beasts were not enough to hurt the woman. Only ghosts could give it a try. Although it was still daytime, they were still in the tomb, so they could still use their ghost powers. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Under Gray's control, 20 desolate-level blood beast ghosts quickly approached the woman from the ground. The next moment, they drilled out of the ground and rushed towards the woman. The sudden change shocked the woman. She quickly dodged, avoiding the ghosts as if they were snakes or scorpions. For ordinary people, it was very difficult to see ghosts. They were regarded as ghosts and legends. But kings had more or less seen them and knew their characteristics. The woman dodged again and again, but she was now in the tomb. Space was limited, and the space to dodge was greatly reduced. Although she dodged most of the ghosts, one of them still managed to latch onto her and burrow into her body. Success! Gray's face lit up with joy. Although the opponent's defense was strong, it would be useless against Spectre's attack that directly attacked the soul. But in the next moment, crackle, crackle, the ring on the woman's left hand suddenly burst with lightning. It was transmitted to the woman's body, and with her, as the center, it burst out in all directions. Woo, woo. The spirit attached to the woman's body let out a shriek and then severed its connection with Gray. Clearly, it was completely dead. It wasn't just this spirit. The surrounding desolate-level blood beast spirits were also instantly annihilated by the lightning. Gray hurriedly ordered the other ghosts to burrow into the ground. Only then were they not annihilated by the lightning. Thunder Elemental Demonic Weapon. Gray was slightly disappointed that the Ghost trump card had failed. Although the opponent's Blood Beast ability was neither lightning nor fire, it had a Thunder Elemental Demonic Weapon. It could also restrain the Ghost. Although he had long known that the Ghost was not as effective against humans as against Blood Beasts, since humans had demonic weapons and could use other abilities besides their own, he did not expect his first attack to fail. Bang! A figure flew backward and crashed into the wall of the tomb. A human-shaped mark was left on the wall, causing the entire space to shake. The person who flew backward was a woman. Although the woman activated the Thunder Elemental Demonic Weapon and blocked the ghost's attack, she was forced to stop the attack of the Golden Blade. This gave the king-clawed beast an opportunity to pounce forward and claw her body with its 2-meter-long claws. However, such an attack was useless against her. Apart from the torn clothes on her abdomen, there was no wound on her fair skin. There was not even a scratch. She's more of a monster than I am. Gray cursed in his heart. He took out the fog crystal ball and activated it. The entire tomb was suddenly filled with fog. He recalled the ghost, the king beast, Stanley Grinton, and the king-clawed beast. Then, he teleported away. Humph! When the fog dispersed, the woman looked around and did not see Gray. She could not help but snort coldly. After searching the tomb carefully and finding nothing, she turned and left the tomb. After teleporting several times, Gray arrived at the forest where he usually trained. Facing an opponent whose defense could not be broken, and with the things in the tomb already in his hands, there was no need to continue fighting. Therefore, he made a prompt decision to retreat. At this moment, he could clearly feel the helplessness of those who couldn't break through his defenses. Taking out the rune portal bag, Gray probed the golden lines with his blood power and checked the rune portal bag. A large space appeared in Gray's perception. This was a rune portal bag about a few thousand cubic meters. It was definitely the best among the rune portal bags. There were many items in the portal bag. There were hundreds of thousands of magic coins. If converted to gold coins, it would be tens of millions of gold coins. There were magic potion bottles. Gray checked them one by one. Perhaps because they were placed in the portal bag, these potions did not lose their effectiveness. Gray, who had consulted the royal family's alchemy master about potions, had a lot of knowledge in the field of potions. He could recognize most of the potions, and surprisingly, there were 15 bottles of purple moon potions. The purple moon potion that was already not much was expanded again. There would be no shortage of auxiliary training resources for the next 1 or 2 years. There are also gold coins. There are not many of them, only tens of thousands. They should be used as pocket money. Through the gold coins, Gray determined that this was the tomb of a king-level powerhouse during the Purple Moon Kingdom period. This was because these were gold coins that were issued by the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Gray browsed through the items in the runic space one by one. When he saw something, he couldn't help but stop. It was an exquisitely decorated blue longsword. The hilt and scabbard were both blue, and there were golden patterns on the hilt. It was decorated with golden gems, and it was as exquisite as a work of art. This sword was also the only magic weapon in the entire runic portal bag. Could this be? Gray was slightly excited as he took the sword out of the portal bag. He could not wait to pull out of the scabbard. The body of the sword was blue and white. There were beautiful golden lines on it. It was beautiful. Rather than calling a magic weapon, it was better to call it a work of art. Using spatial teleportation, Gray appeared in the red leaf forest. He found a place and slashed out with the sword. The black fog, which had been enhanced by the magic weapon, rolled and surged out like a tsunami. Poof, poof, poof. Everything along the way was destroyed. Finally, the black fog spread more than 1,000 meters away before it stopped and completely disappeared. One attack was enough to affect more than 1,000 meters away. This was clearly the power of a king. To be able to enhance Gray's power to the king level, the level of this magic weapon was obvious. It was a silver weapon and a silver sword-type weapon. Although Gray now had a silver sword-type weapon, it was currently in the hands of Barnet Naeem. Although he could take it back from the other party, it would inevitably weaken Barnet Naeem's power. Now that he had a silver sword-type weapon in his hands, he did not need to compete with Barnet Naeem for a weapon. He could display the strongest power in his hands. After carefully inspecting the items in the portal bag, he gained a lot. Sure enough, king-level powerhouses were all filthy rich. The wealth of a king-level powerhouse was enough for an ordinary noble family to spend for several generations. In fact, at the level of a king-level powerhouse, ordinary wealth was not too important. What they valued was powerful and rare items. For example, magic potions that could assist in cultivation or had other effects, such as powerful magic weapons, or evolution herbs that could promote bloodline evolution. At their current level, ordinary basic necessities were no longer their pursuit. Their only pursuit was a higher realm. Only this kind of thing that was closely related to the increase of their power could attract their attention. Chapter 5:24. A month later, an evolutionary herb was discovered in the northern forest of the Purple Moon Kingdom. It was guarded by a king-level blood beast. A king-level powerhouse from the Kenneth family killed the king-level blood beast and obtained the evolutionary herb. 2 months later, a king's graveyard appeared in the western part of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Various forces fought over it. Although no silver-grade weapons appeared, the wealth within made the participating forces rich. Of course, the powerless families also suffered heavy casualties in this fight. 3 months later, a king's graveyard appeared in the central part of the Purple Moon Kingdom. It was a king's graveyard from the Empire era. The graveyard appeared very close to the capital, and the wealth within was obtained by the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. 4 months later, an evolutionary herb was discovered in the central part of the Purple Moon Kingdom. A king-level powerhouse from the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family was dispatched and obtained it. 5 months later, a king's graveyard appeared near the Flame Kingdom. It was obtained by the Nahum family under Gray's control. Most of the wealth within fell into Gray's hands. Half a year later, a grand birthday banquet was being held at Francis's residence in the capital. In the banquet hall, young nobles of high status walked around and chatted with each other while holding crystal goblets. Gray was naturally among the invited. Not only him, but Bernal, Caroline, Sarah, and other members of the Fergus family's younger generation were also invited because of him. Gray raised his crystal goblet and clinked it with Francis's, the main character of the banquet, to give him his blessings. The latter expressed his gratitude and nodded to Gray, sighing slightly as he spoke. In the past 6 months, the changes have been too frequent. Indeed, too frequent. Hearing this, Gray also sighed slightly. In the past 6 months, opportunities had exploded. Within the Purple Moon Kingdom, evolutionary herbs appeared twice, and kings' graveyards appeared 3 times. There were also many other opportunities. Although the items that appeared were not as valuable as these two, they were still great opportunities. It could be said that the opportunities that had erupted in the past half a year were comparable to those that had occurred in the past few decades. Both he and Francis had profited greatly from such a great opportunity, but they couldn't help but feel uneasy in the face of such an opportunity. Such an outbreak was not normal, and there was definitely a deeper reason for it. However, neither he, Francis, nor the upper echelons of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family could figure out the reason. Because he couldn't figure it out, he felt uneasy. Although it was a good thing to have a series of opportunities, would there be any hidden dangers in the series of explosions? This was what everyone was worried about. What's the situation with the other 3 kingdoms? Gray asked. That's also the case. Opportunities are endless, as if we've entered an unprecedented period of prosperity. Francis said. Prosperity? Gray fell into deep thought. If this was really a sign that the world had entered a period of prosperity, then it would be fine. However, he was afraid that this was not the beginning of prosperity, but the beginning of a major disaster. Are there any similar records in the history of the Empire? No. I've looked through many historical books about the Empire, but there are no similar records. Francis shook his head and said in a deep voice, Could it be related to the super-large runes? Gray thought for a moment and asked, We can't rule out that possibility. Although the royal family has discovered the super-large runic matrix for a long time, their understanding of it is next to nothing. Francis said after a slight pause. Although they had sent out rune masters to study this rune, they found that the complexity of this rune was beyond imagination, far beyond the rune standards of the Purple Moon Kingdom and even the 4 kingdoms. I say, you two. One of you is the main character of the banquet, and the other isn't the main character but is very eye-catching. Can you not talk about such a heavy topic at a time like this, causing the atmosphere around to become heavy? Sophia and Hylia, who were dressed in a formal dress that showed off their perfect and beautiful figures, walked over, half joking and half serious. Gray and Francis looked around. Sure enough, because of the topic of their conversation, many people around them were listening attentively, causing the expressions on their faces to gradually become serious. The two of them resentfully into the topic. The occasion was indeed not suitable to talk about such things. Without the heavy topic, the banquet ended in a happy atmosphere, and the children of the great noble families from all over the kingdom dispersed. Gray, Bernal, and the others did not leave the imperial city immediately. Gray had been to the imperial city many times, but it was the first time for Bernal and the others. They were very interested in the imperial city and were prepared to play in the imperial city for a few days. In the following days, the group visited all the shops in the imperial city, tried all kinds of specialties, bought many works of art, and even participated in an auction. The whole process cost them hundreds of thousands of gold coins, but this amount of money was simply a drop in the bucket for Gray. Now, it could be said that he had so much money that he had nowhere to spend it. The things that caught his eye were already very difficult to buy with money, and it could be said that the things that could be bought with money were not too valuable. After the group was satisfied, they turned back. Naturally, they used spatial teleportation, and after a few teleportations, they had returned to the Fergus family. During the few days in the Imperial City, Gray met up with Sophia, Hylia, and Francis wants to continue the unfinished topic of the banquet, with Sophia and Hylia joining in as well. The discussion did not yield any results. So far, they could not even judge whether this anomaly was good or bad, let alone make preparations for it. What was certain, however, was that a great change that would engulf the entire world was happening. In the face of this great change, the only thing that could be done was to make good use of the opportunity that appeared and speed up the improvement of one's strength, striving to improve one's strength quickly. In this way, even if there was a great change, one's ability to protect oneself would increase by a little. In the morning, Gray began his blood technique cultivation as usual. With the Thunder King Beast's blood technique cultivation, a large amount of blue light gathered and turned into a giant beast. The giant beast was more than 10 meters long, and its appearance resembled a lizard. Its body was covered in blue scales, and there was a single horn that was several meters long on its forehead, like a giant knife. It was the King Beast Thunder King Beast. The first round of cultivation. The second round of cultivation. The first round of cultivation in the third round of cultivation. The second round of cultivation in the third round of cultivation. The third round of cultivation in the third round of cultivation. The fourth round of cultivation in the third round of cultivation. In the desolate level stage, completing 2 rounds of blood technique cultivation meant reaching the second level of the desolate level. Completing 3 rounds of blood technique cultivation meant reaching the third level of the desolate level. In half a year, with the help of supplementary cultivation medicine, Gray was now at the bottleneck of the third round of cultivation. As long as he could break through this bottleneck, he would be able to enter the fourth round of cultivation and reach the third level of the desolate level. Gray had been in this state for more than 10 days. Based on his previous inferences, he estimated that he would break through in the next few days. Crack! The Thunder King Beast's shadow collapsed and disappeared, revealing Gray's figure. He was sweating profusely, and his hair was wet as if he had been fished out of the water. Still a little short, Gray wiped the sweat that had covered his eyes and took a deep breath. He was slightly depressed. He was not able to break through the bottleneck and enter the fourth round of cultivation. There was no obvious feeling of transformation in his body. Young Master Gray, the bath water is ready. Seeing that Gray had finished his cultivation, Babla came up to Gray and informed him. Babla was wearing a long casual dress. The high-grade silk wrapped around her curvaceous body. Her breasts were high, and her buttocks were round. Her long brown hair was coiled up with a beautiful hairpin, revealing her snow-white and slender neck. A blue gemstone necklace hung around her neck. Gray had bought it from the Imperial Capital's auction house. It was made by a jewelry master in the Imperial Capital. Gray nodded. He took off his sweaty clothes and looked at Babla with a burning gaze. Babla wanted to resist, but he still carried her. He carried her soft and beautiful body and walked to the bathroom. After a round of harmony, Gray's gloominess disappeared, and he felt refreshed. After changing into a clean set of clothes, he took Babla, whose face was slightly flushed, through the underground tunnel and headed to Fergus Castle. The two strolled around the Fergus Castle garden for a while before Gray finally reached the castle hall. "You're here, Gray. I was just about to go look for you." Bernal walked over hurriedly as footsteps sounded. His footsteps were slightly hurried, different from his usual calm self. Gray followed Bernal to Earl Fergus's study and saw Earl Fergus, who had been waiting for him. "What happened?" Gray asked doubtfully. Something big must have happened for the two of them to be so anxious. A village in the territory was attacked by a blood fiend. More than 100 people died, and only a few dozen managed to escape. Earl Fergus said in a deep voice, "Is this blood fiend not an ordinary one?" Due to the mutation this year, blood fiends that were affected by the mutation would leave the forest and enter human territory from time to time. Such incidents had happened before. Gray naturally did not think that Earl Fergus and Bernal would be so anxious because of the number of casualties. The only reason was that the blood fiend that attacked the village was not an ordinary one. This blood fiend was 9 meters long, and the flames it spat out drowned half the village in an instant. It's very likely a desolate level blood fiend. Earl Fergus said in a serious tone. "I see." Gray nodded and said, "To be on the safe side, get someone to send Barnett over." "Barnett?" Wouldn't that be too risky? Earl Fergus was full of doubts. His original plan was to send Desolate Blood Warrior, Gout, Deafing, and Grey together to ensure that nothing would go wrong. He did not expect Grey to send Barnet instead. He knew that Barnet was someone that Grey had brought back. He had never seen him in action, and he did not feel any sense of danger from him. He had always thought that Barnet's strength was average, and that Grey had brought him back because of his other abilities. What he did not know was that the reason he did not feel any danger was because Barnet had already withdrawn his aura. Otherwise, apart from a few people in the castle, everyone else would find it difficult to even stand up. "Father, don't worry. He's more than enough." Grey could not help but smile. A dignified king-level expert was actually suspected of being weak. He wondered what Barnet would think if he knew. Just how strong is he? Earl Fergus could tell that Grey believed that Barnet's strength was far above Gautifing's, so he could not help but ask seriously. To the side, Bernal was also puzzled and curious. Grey lowered his voice so that only those in the study could hear him. "He's a king-level warrior." Chapter 5:25. What a king-level warrior! Even someone as calm as Earl Fergus almost jumped up in shock. He looked at Grey in shock, his face full of disbelief. Did I hear wrongly? Bernal did not have the same composure as Earl Fergus. He stood up from his chair in shock, his face full of shock and astonishment. A king-level warrior was like a legend to them. Even though there was already a Desolate Blood Warrior who was only one level away from a king-level warrior in the family, they still could not help but maintain a high level of reverence for a king-level warrior. This had always been the status of a king-level warrior in everyone's hearts. They stood at the peak of the Desolate Blood Warriors and were unreachable, like a monument. Many ordinary people who saw a king-level warrior by chance would treat it as a lifetime of bragging rights. They would not forget to brag about it to everyone they met, immediately attracting the envy of those who heard it. It was obvious how high a king-level warrior's status was in the eyes of ordinary people. It could be said that king-level warriors were almost deified in the eyes of ordinary people in this world. When they suddenly heard that Barnet was a king-level warrior, their first reaction was that they had heard wrongly. For a family like the Fergus family, it was possible for a king-level warrior to appear in the future because of Grey. However, it was impossible for them to recruit a king-level warrior as a bodyguard. You didn't hear wrongly. He is indeed a king-level warrior. I saved him before and made some agreements with him, so he agreed to protect the Fergus family. Grey shook his head as he explained. He was not deliberately showing off. It was just that in this world where the world was constantly changing, Earl Fergus, Bernal, and the others should know about this. At his current level of strength, it was inevitable for him to go out often. It was impossible for him to stay in the Fergus family all the time. If something unexpected happened to the family while he was out, it would be dangerous. In this world where the world was constantly changing, such a thing was not impossible. This time, there was a suspected attack by a Desolate-level blood fiend. It was not impossible for a king-level blood fiend to attack the family next time. Just in case, he had to leave a powerful expert in the family and let Earl Fergus and the others know about it. Only by knowing that, Count Fergus and the others wouldn't lose their composure and know who to ask for help in an emergency situation. They wouldn't miss the best timing because they didn't know that there was such an expert in the family. Is he really a king-level expert? After a long while, Earl Fergus and Bernal finally calmed down. Their faces were still filled with shock as they looked at Grey. Yes, he is indeed a king-level warrior. Knowing that the news was too shocking, the two of them still had some doubts. Grey repeated it again with a serious expression. Soon after, Barnet Naim, who had received the order, set off to the place where the blood fiend was suspected to have appeared. Half a day later, he returned with the corpse of a Desolate-level blood fiend. Seeing the Desolate-level blood fiend's corpse and the only wound on it, Earl Fergus and Bernal were finally convinced of Barnet Naim's king-level strength. Killing a Desolate-level blood fiend in one blow was something that even a third-stage Desolate-level blood warrior could not do. Only a king-level expert could do it. Barnet's identity as a king-level expert was beyond doubt. 2 days later, in the forest where Grey was cultivating, the phantom of the Thunder King beast appeared. Gray began his routine cultivation. The first round of cultivation. The second round of cultivation. The third round of cultivation. The fourth training method. Under the phantom of the Thunder Dragon beast, Gray's clothes were once again drenched. He tried his best to persevere. Crackle, crackle. A crisp sound rang out from Gray's body. Then, a series of popping sounds rang out from within Gray's body. The phantom of the Thunder King beast disappeared, but the changes in Gray's body did not stop. His body was rapidly changing at a speed that could be felt. Or rather, it was metamorphosing. Every part of his flesh, every piece of bone, every drop of blood, every strand of hair was undergoing a metamorphosis. His muscles had become tougher and sturdier. Although his body size had not expanded, his strength had increased at a terrifying rate. His bones had become denser and harder. If one could cut open his body, they would discover that all the bones in his body had become completely jade-like, just like a king-level expert. His blood had become more vigorous and full of vitality. It was as if all the blood in his body had been replaced. His heartbeat had become stronger and more powerful, like a beating drum. Large amounts of black matter seeped out of his body. Those were the impurities produced by the rapid metamorphosis. Within his heart, the vortex formed by the power of blood was rapidly expanding. Every strand of power of blood was becoming denser. In the center, there was even a faint tendency to atomize. The metamorphosis only ended after half an hour. Gray's body was covered in black stains and emitted a foul stench. Smelling the stench, Gray frowned slightly. He took a bath and changed his clothes. At this moment, he felt that his entire body was filled with strength. It was as if he could kill a desolate-level blood fiend with one hand. This was not an illusion. Because he had swallowed the blood of the Diamond King beast, he had reached level 3 of the desolate level. His strength should be comparable to that of a king-level expert. With such strength, it would not be difficult to kill a desolate-level blood fiend. Of course, the prerequisite was that there was a desolate-level blood fiend that was small enough for him to pinch with one hand. I've reached level 3 of the desolate level. It was obvious that the metamorphosis that had happened to his body was because he had reached level 3 of the desolate level. Now, he was definitely at level 3 of the desolate level. In just over a year, he had completed a round of blood technique cultivation and reached level 3 of the desolate level from level 2 of the desolate level. This cultivation speed was even faster than when he was in the barbarian level. Due to his metamorphosis ability, he was in the second metamorphosis state, and his strength was increasing several times faster than others. However, it was still impossible for him to reach a higher level in such a short period of time. The reason was that he had sufficient resources for auxiliary cultivation. From level 2 of the desolate level to level 3, Gray had never stopped receiving auxiliary cultivation resources. It was because of this that he was able to reach level 3 of the desolate level so quickly. The king-level experts of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family had never stopped. There were also several king-level experts coexisting in the world. This was not without reason. With a powerful auxiliary cultivation medicine, like the Purple Moon Potion and an ample supply of resources, although not everyone in the royal family could become a king-level expert, as long as they had the qualifications, the chances of them becoming a king-level expert would be extremely high. Under such circumstances, the probability of a king-level expert being born was naturally much higher than other forces. At this rate, I'm afraid I'll become a king-level expert before the age of 25. Gray was now 23 years old. There was still more than a year before he turned 25. It was entirely possible for him to become a king-level expert within this period of time. Even in the history of the Purple Moon Kingdom, there had never been a king-level expert at the age of 25. According to the royal secrets that Gray had heard from Sophia, the youngest king-level expert in the Purple Moon Kingdom was called Bishop Violet. He became a king-level expert at the age of 35. His achievements were also very shocking. Even in this world where he was suppressed, he had reached the pinnacle of his third evolution. If there was no invisible suppression in this world, he would definitely become a magic light level existence. The second metamorphosis is the main reason why he could reach this stage at such a young age. Compared to Bernal and the others, Gray's talent could be considered outstanding. However, compared to Francis and Sophia, he could only be considered average. The reason why he could reach this stage at such a young age was entirely due to the second metamorphosis. The second metamorphosis allowed his body to undergo rapid metamorphosis. The speed at which his strength increased was more than a few times that of the average person. Moreover, under the second metamorphosis, his absorption rate of various auxiliary cultivation medicines' active ingredients had become extremely terrifying. He had absorbed almost all of it, and there was no waste at all. The same bottle of Purple Moon potion could increase Gray's strength by a large margin after consuming it, while others might only be able to increase a little after consuming it. This was the difference in the absorption rate of the body. Of course, the second metamorphosis was not without side effects. The biggest side effect was an increased appetite. However, compared to the benefits that it brought, this side effect was nothing. There's no hurry to test the changes in my strength. Let's drink the Ice Soul King Beast blood first. Gray took out the Ice Soul King Beast blood. After reaching level 3 of the Desolate level, his physique could undergo another metamorphosis. He decided to drink the Ice Soul King Beast blood first before testing the changes in his strength. After pouring out a portion, Gray drank it in one gulp. It was as if he had drunk a mouthful of ice water mixed with crushed ice. Gray first felt the coldness in his stomach, then the coldness spread throughout his body. Crack! Crack! Gray's body was visible to the naked eye. Gray's entire body was covered in ice. He was completely frozen in ice. Even the area around him was covered in ice. The extreme coldness attacked Gray. He had not felt cold for a long time, but now he felt it again. He was like an ordinary person wearing thin clothes in winter. His entire body was frozen as if it did not belong to him. If someone cut him with a knife at this time, he might not even feel the pain. After a long time, Gray could not tell how long it had been. The coldness made him lose his ability to think. He felt the coldness gradually disappear and warmth gradually returned. Although he was still frozen in ice, he could no longer feel the coldness. The ice outside his body was obviously not enough to make him feel cold. Crack! A powerful force erupted. His body shook slightly. The ice outside Gray's body suddenly cracked and shattered. Gray broke free from the ice easily. Shaking off the ice and snow on his body, Gray activated the teleportation ability of the purple ring. When he reappeared, he was in the Red Leaves Forest. Now, the Red Leaves Forest had become his backyard to test the ability of his blood fiends. Chapter 5:26. Standing in the forest, Gray looked around. Soon, he found a moss-covered mountain rock lying between the trees. It should weigh more than 100 tons. Bang! Gray stomped his foot on the ground, causing it to collapse. Using the recoil force, Gray's figure shot out, heading straight for the boulder that weighed more than 100 tons. With his terrifying speed, Gray appeared beside the mountain rock almost instantly. He clenched his hand into a fist and punched down. Boom! The mountain rock that weighed more than 100 tons cracked and exploded into countless pieces of gravel. Each piece of gravel was like a cannonball, and a large area of the surrounding forest collapsed under the gravel. King-level speed, king-level strength. Gray, who had dealt with king-level opponents more than once or twice, was very confident that the speed and strength he had just displayed were at the king level. With such strength and speed, Gray wasn't surprised at all. The King Kong King Beast was a king-level blood beast with a physical body type. It was a blood beast that rarely had a match among king-level blood beasts. Its speed, strength, and defense were at the peak of the same level, and could be compared to a higher level. Although Gray was only at level 3 of the Desolation level, he had inherited the bloodline of the King Kong King Beast. His strength and speed at level 3 of the Desolation level were comparable to that of an ordinary king-level warrior. There's a simpler way to determine whether my strength and speed are comparable to that of a king-level warrior. Gray casually brushed aside a piece of gravel that was sputtering toward him. He thought of another way to test his strength and speed. Whoosh! The next moment his body burst out. Bang! After running a few steps forward, he suddenly stomped on the void and pressed down hard. After a burst of air explosion, he was temporarily suspended in the air. Bang! He, who was temporarily suspended in the air, quickly followed up with his other foot. He also stepped on the void and pressed down fiercely, causing a strong rebound force. Not only was he suspended in the air, he even moved a step forward in the air. Bang, bang, bang. His left and right feet stomped on the void, and immediately he began to run rapidly in the void. There was no sign of him falling from the void. It was as if there was an invisible staircase beneath his feet that was supporting his body, preventing him from falling from the void. His strength and speed have definitely reached the king level. The void step was the symbol of a human king level powerhouse. It was also the simplest way to measure whether one's strength and speed had reached the king level. The result was obvious. His strength and speed had reached the level of a king. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to walk in the void. After a long time, Gray, who had run back and forth in the void several times, returned to the ground, satisfied with the novelty. Although I can also fly in the air using void step, in terms of flexibility, flying in the air with wings is still more flexible. Of course, void treading is not without its advantages. It uses the power of the physical body and does not consume the power of the blood. Gray, who had mastered the mimicry wings and void treading at the same time, evaluated the two flight methods objectively. Both flight methods had their own advantages and disadvantages. One was flexible, but it consumed the power of the blood. The other was less flexible, but didn't consume the power of the blood. What was certain was that both flight methods were useful. Choosing different flight methods under different circumstances was the best combination. After testing his strength and speed, Gray turned his attention to defense. Compared to strength and speed, Gray placed more importance on defense, because this was his greatest capital to survive until now. If it weren't for this powerful defense, he would have died countless times already. Previously, my defense was enough to make it difficult for a level 1 king to injure me. Now that my level has increased, my defense should be able to withstand a level 1 king's attack without being injured. With a thought, the King's Claw beast appeared in front of Gray. Gray ordered it to attack him. The King's Claw beast raised its giant claw. 3 2-meter-long sharp claws flashed with a cold metallic light. Then, it quickly clawed at Gray. Clang! After the sound of metal colliding, Gray's body was pushed back. He retreated 100 meters before the impact on his body dissipated. He looked at his body and suddenly saw 3 horizontal scratches on his clothes on his chest. Through the scratches on his clothes, Gray looked at his skin. He saw that there was not a trace of a wound on his skin, not even a scratch. Unharmed. Under the full attack of a King's Claw beast, Gray was not injured at all. It was as if the attack was not a king's attack, but a casual slap from a child. Indeed, I can withstand a level 1 king's attack without being injured. Gray nodded with satisfaction. His defense had indeed improved greatly. He just didn't know how strong his defense would be when facing a level 2 king. In other words, a king who had evolved once. However, this was something he would only know when he met a second stage king stage expert in the future. Currently, his resurrection ability and corpse control ability could only control the combat power of a first stage king stage expert. He could not unleash the combat power of a second stage king stage expert. Next, let's test the power of the 3 mixed abilities. Looking into the distance, Gray's mind moved. The black fog that was not enhanced by any magic weapons rolled out like waves. Wave after wave, it spread forward mightily. Chi! 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 A doomsday-like scene appeared. Giant trees that were dozens of meters tall, rocks that weighed hundreds of tons, small protruding hills, blood fiends that sensed danger and fled in panic. Everything was shattered and disappeared. The black waves spread all the way. After a while, they finally stopped. An exaggerated trace appeared. The black waves spread forward for more than 2,000 meters before finally disappearing. Wherever it passed, the ground was flattened as if it was cut out by a giant saber. One attack is enough to affect more than 2,000 meters away. This is beyond Level 1 King. Level 1 King's combat power could generally affect more than 1,000 meters away. Even with the enhancement of a silver weapon, it could not exceed 2,000 meters. However, his attack without the enhancement of a magic weapon was enough to affect more than 2,000 meters away. Its power must have exceeded Level 1 King's. Level 2 King's combat power is comparable to a Level 1 King's. Gray was very sure that the power of this attack was comparable to Level 2 King's. Only this level of power could affect more than 2,000 meters away. As expected, the power of the three mixed abilities has surpassed Level 1 King's and reached Level 2 King's. Gray's expression was slightly excited. Although he had already guessed before, when the power was comparable to a Level 1 King's, Gray could not help but feel excited. Now, not counting his resurrection ability and corpse control ability, he was a genuine king. His destructive power was not Level 1 King's, but Level 2 King's. My three mixed abilities have surpassed my corpse control and resurrection abilities. They have become my strongest abilities. The strongest combat power that his resurrection and corpse controlling abilities could unleash was only at the first level of the king level. Therefore, his strongest trump card was no longer his corpse controlling abilities and resurrection abilities. Instead, it was the three mixed abilities that could unleash the power of the second level of the king level. My ability to protect myself has become stronger. Gray felt uneasy about the changes in the world. He had a feeling that something bad was going to happen. Now, his defense and strongest combat power had been improved. Although he was not sure if this ability could protect him in the coming changes, at least his ability to protect himself had increased. The possibility of him being able to protect himself had increased. After the test, Gray teleported back to the Fergus family. Young Master Gray. Young Master Gray. Walking in Fergus Castle, Gray nodded to the servant who greeted him. Because of the unknown changes, he had accumulated a lot of pressure in his heart. Now that his strength had increased, he could finally relax. He did not know what kind of changes would happen, but it was good that his strength had increased and his ability to protect himself had increased. While walking, his expression changed slightly. He felt a connection on the spiritual level. It was something that only people who had been resurrected by his resurrection ability could do. He carefully identified it and immediately determined who this connection was from. Using space teleportation, he disappeared from Fergus Castle. In the innermost core area of Nahum Castle, only the higher-ups could enter. In a hall, Gray sat in the seat of the head of the Nahum family. On his left and right sat the higher-ups of the Nahum family, including the head of the Nahum family. "Why did you contact me?" Gray looked at the head of the Nahum family and asked. He was the one who had contacted him. "Sir, we have found traces of a corporeal, king-level blood fiend." The head of the Nahum family answered respectfully from the first seat on Gray's right. He did not seem to be dissatisfied that Gray was sitting in the seat that should have belonged to him. "Oh, where is it?" Gray asked with interest. Although his current combat strength was comparable to a first metamorphosis king-level blood fiend, he did not mind hunting another corporeal king-level blood fiend to increase the number of corpses he could control and strengthen his strength. Of course, the stronger he was, the better. "In the sapphire forest of the Jewel Kingdom." The head of the Nahum family replied. "The sapphire forest of the Jewel Kingdom? How did you know about it?" Gray was slightly surprised. The Nahum family actually had a way to know about the Jewel Kingdom. "Sir, this is the news brought back by a caravan of the Nahum family that went to the Jewel Kingdom. This is a detail map." The head of the Nahum family stood up and respectfully handed over a map. "Well done." Gray reached out and took it. He glanced at it and nodded with satisfaction. This was a very detailed map of the Jewel Kingdom. The rivers and mountains were clearly visible. It was a rare map. The Nahum family must have put in a lot of effort to obtain such a map. Chapter 5:27. On the same day, Gray set off for the Jewel Kingdom. The Jewel Kingdom was a country rich in gemstones. It was the wealthiest kingdom among the three kingdoms. Gray had been to the Jewel Kingdom during the previous Tri-Nation exchange. He had left some coordinates along the way. With the help of the coordinates, Gray quickly entered the territory of the Jewel Kingdom. However, after entering the territory of the Jewel Kingdom, he could no longer rely on teleportation. After all, the teleportation led directly to the capital of the Jewel Kingdom, which was different from the Sapphire Forest. A pair of greenish-black wings sprouted from Gray's back. The Purple Moon Kingdom and the Jewel Kingdom were allied kingdoms. Gray was not worried that the Jewel Kingdom would expel him if they found out. Gray was not in a hurry along the way. From time to time, he would land in a neighboring city to experience the different customs of the Purple Moon Kingdom. The last time he came to the Jewel Kingdom, he had been involved in the Tri-Nation Exchange and the assassination attempt by the Flaming Teeth. He did not have the chance to tour the Jewel Kingdom. This time, he could make up for it. Even though he was traveling while enjoying the local customs, he was still flying in a straight line. After 2 days, Gray arrived at the Sapphire Forest. Comparing the map, Gray quickly approached the place marked on the map where the physical king-level blood fiends had appeared before. Stop! Suddenly, a dozen wooden spears, each half a meter thick and 10 meters long, whizzed past Gray not far from him. The strong wind caused by the spears made Gray's hair messy. Gray's flying figure could not help but stop. He looked down and saw a few people in combat armor in the forest below. The wooden spear, just now, was a wood elemental ability used by one of them. Judging from the distance between the wooden spear and him, it did not seem like they were going to attack him. It seemed like they just wanted to stop him and did not intend to hurt him. Gray landed on the ground and asked them, "Why did you stop me?" The leader was a middle-aged man. He was slightly surprised to see Gray's age, but he still asked, "We are from the Stock family. This area has been sealed off by the Stock family. No one is allowed to enter for the time being." The Stock family? Gray had heard of this family before. They were one of the 4 dukes in the Jewel Kingdom. Stock family status in the Jewel Kingdom was comparable to the Kenneth families in the Purple Moon Kingdom, because they still had a king-level expert alive. The Stock family of the family, because they still had a king-level expert. The Stock family really, real? A young man angrily rebuked. Gray frowned slightly. The other party's tone made him unhappy, but he did not act out immediately. Let's be frank. That evolution herb belongs to the Stokian family. No other faction is allowed to touch it. Evolution herbs? There are evolutionary herbs here? Gray's heart skipped a beat. News of a king-level blood beast and evolutionary herbs. When he put the 2 pieces of information together, he had a rough idea of what was going on. The king-class blood beast he was looking for was most likely the one guarding the evolutionary medicinal herb. It was precisely because someone had discovered the evolutionary medicinal herb and the king-class blood beast that the news of the king-class blood beast had reached the Naeem family's caravan. "Are you still trying to pretend?" Seeing Gray's enlightened look, the young man said disdainfully. Gray couldn't be bothered with the young man. Instead, he looked at the middle-aged man and asked, "How long will it take?" If it was not necessary, he did not want to provoke a family with a king-level expert. "I'm not sure how long it will take, but it will probably take about 10 days. The middle-aged man thought for a moment and replied, 10 days? Gray frowned. That was too long. He could not afford to waste 10 days in one place. 10 days is too long. I can't wait. Can you let me in? My goal is not the evolutionary herb. I will definitely not fight with the Stock family for it. You make it sound nice. I don't believe you won't be tempted by an evolutionary herb. You must be thinking of snatching it while Sir Kuan Yin is fighting with a king-level blood beast." Before the middle-aged man could speak, the young man beside him sneered. "Humph." Gray snorted and looked at the young man coldly. The young man's words were sarcastic and had angered him. "What do you want?" Being stared at by Gray, the young man felt as if he was being stared at by a terrifying blood beast. He panicked. "I told you to shut up." Gray stood where he was, but in the next moment, a streak of ice quickly spread out, spreading toward the young man. Feeling the terrifying chill spreading toward him, the young man was shocked. He quickly retreated and burst out with the speed of a second-stage barbarian. His opponent should be a second-stage barbarian blood warrior. It was not bad for him to have such strength at his age. Unfortunately, it was useless. The chill quickly spread to the young man's body, and he turned into an ice sculpture with a horrified look on his face. Seeing how easily Gray had subdued the young man, the pupils of the middle-aged man and the others shrank. They activated their blood fiends, and thick twisting plants and earth spikes rose from the ground, all of them preparing to attack Gray. I advise you not to attack. I'm sure you can feel my strength. You have no chance of winning against me. Gray's gaze swept across the few people. They felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Don't worry, I didn't kill him. I'm not here for the evolutionary herb, but I do need to enter this area for something. If the stock family is unhappy about it, feel free to look for me. A pair of greenish-black wings appeared on Gray's back. He soared into the air and quickly flew into the forest. During the process, the middle-aged man and the others were sweating profusely. They did not dare to attack because they felt that they had no chance of winning, just as Gray had said. To be able to render a second-stage barbarian defenseless, his opponent was at least a desolate blood warrior. He was not someone they could fight against. I'll go inform the family. You guys save the young master. The middle-aged man looked at the young man who was still frozen and shook his head in disappointment. He ran in a direction. Compared to that young master, this young master was not just a little bit inferior, whether it was in terms of character or strength. It was a pity that the young master had died under the assassination of Flaming Fawn. It was a pain that the Stock family would never forget. Even though the family had chosen this young master as their successor, it was obvious that this young master could not be compared to that young master. Flying in the area that the Stock family prohibited outsiders from entering, Gray looked around carefully. That king-level blood fiend should be nearby and hasn't left. Even though the young man's words were sarcastic, Gray still managed to glean some useful information from his words. Even though the king-level blood fiend had been chased away by the Stock family and was forced to leave the place where the evolutionary herbs were, it did not seem to have given up on the fight for the herbs. Otherwise, it would not have said something like, it must be trying to steal the herbs while Sir Kuan Yin was fighting the king-level blood fiend. It was obvious that the king-level blood fiend had not left and was still eyeing the evolutionary herbs. Gray also guessed that the Stock family was aware of the whereabouts of the king-level blood fiend. The fastest way to find it was to ask the Stock family. However, after the conflict just now, asking would be seen as a provocation. But it did not matter much. Since it was nearby, it should be easy to find. As expected, after searching for half an hour, Gray found the king-level blood fiend. It was a blood fiend that was 12 meters long. Its torso was thick and round like a house. Its body was covered in black fur, and its forelegs were as thick as pillars with 4 hooves. The most unique feature was its mouth. It was so sharp that it almost split open to the roots of its ears. Demonic Note King Beast. Gray recognized the king-level blood fiend. The Demonic Note King Beast was a physical-type king-level blood fiend. It had 2 physical abilities, Demonic Note and Powerful Defense. Demonic Note used the vibrations of its vocal cords to produce high-frequency sound waves that were not inferior to the elemental king-level blood fiend's abilities. Because it did not require the use of blood force and could be produced solely by its physical body, it was considered a physical ability. As a physical-type king-level blood fiend, it had a defense that even first-tier king-level blood fiends would not be able to damage. He had already guessed why the Stock family had only chased the king-level blood fiend away instead of killing it. It was not that they did not want to, but that they could not. In order to kill a king-level blood fiend that specialized in defense, it would require the combined efforts of several first-tier king-level blood fiends, or a first metamorphosis king-level blood fiend. Clearly, the king-level blood fiends of the Stock family did not have such capabilities. However, that did not mean that Gray did not have such capabilities. Clang! Gray unsheathed the sword at his waist. It was a beautiful blue, long sword with golden patterns on its surface. It was a silver-grade sword he had obtained from the Tomb of the Kings. Whoosh! Gray slashed the sword through the air. A compressed black mist descended from the sky like a giant black blade and slashed towards the Demonic Note King Beast. The Demonic Note King Beast had long noticed Gray, the uninvited guest. Seeing that Gray had actually launched an attack, it immediately roared. Whoa! The terrifying sound waves immediately attacked the black mist and gray behind it. The sound waves were at the king level. Under normal circumstances, a single attack like that would be enough to flatten everything within a kilometer. Unfortunately, it was facing gray at that moment. Moreover, it was facing Gray's most powerful combination ability. Crack! The demonic note dissipated under the giant black mist blade. The black mist slashed downwards and landed on the demonic note king beast body. Puffed. Blood splattered everywhere. A deep wound appeared on the left side of the demonic note king beast's abdomen. One attack was enough to injure the demonic note king beast, a first-tier king-level blood fiend. This was Gray's most powerful force. Chapter 528. He's a king-class expert. In the distance, a group of people was rushing towards Gray. They were sent by the Stokian family to deal with Gray. There were quite a few experts among them, including a third-stage Desolate class expert. From Gray's point of view, he was already holding himself back. He only punished those who provoked him lightly and didn't kill them. Before entering the area, he had even informed the Stokian family that he wasn't here for the evolution herbs. However, the Stokian family didn't see it that way. Not only did he injure the Stokian family's people, he had also entered an area that the Stokian family forbade outsiders from entering. No matter which one it was, the Stokian family saw it as a provocation. As a family with a king-class expert, they were full of confidence and had never feared anyone. That was why they had come aggressively and were prepared to teach the other party a lesson. Along the way, they were shocked to find that the other party seemed to be going for the demonic Note King beast. Now, their shock had turned into utter shock. The other party had actually attacked the demonic Note King beast and seemed to have the upper hand. King-class expert? He's a king-class expert. In the group, the young man who had spoken sarcastically looked at Gray in shock and fear. He had attacked the demonic Note King beast and even had the upper hand. Fear flashed across his face. He had thought that the other party was just a desolate blood warrior. He didn't expect that the other party was actually a king-class expert. He had actually offended a king-class expert. At the thought of that, he couldn't help but want to slap himself a few times. Wasn't he courting death? The dignity of a king-class expert wasn't to be challenged. If he angered the other party, the king-class expert might kill him out of anger. The Stokian family wouldn't be able to do anything to the other party. After all, he was the one who had provoked the other party first. He's not an ordinary king-class expert. The person in the Stokian family who had a third-stage Desolate class expert was an old woman. Her expression was solemn, and cold sweat could be seen on her forehead. Although she was far away, with her eyesight, she could clearly see the demonic Sound King Beast's current situation. On its back, a long wound was clearly visible. One could imagine that the demonic Sound King Beast's injuries were definitely not light. Not long ago, he had witnessed the battle between the demonic Sound King Beast and the King Beast. Naturally, he understood how powerful the demonic Sound King Beast defense was. Being able to injure the demonic Sound King Beast with a single strike was something that not even their lord could do. However, the other party had done it, which meant that the other party's strength was above their lord's. It was very likely that the other party was a king-level expert who had completed a transformation. Retreat, retreat quickly. Her tone was slightly panicked. He wasn't sure if the enemy had already discovered them, but the wisest choice right now was to retreat as soon as possible. Then, he would report back to his king-class experts and let them make the decision. Quick retreat. The others who had discovered them were also sweating profusely. When they heard this, they hurriedly agreed and retreated as if they were fleeing. Some of them didn't forget to glare fiercely at the young man. Of all the people to provoke, he had actually provoked a king-level expert. And not just any ordinary king-level expert either. This was simply pushing the family into a fire pit. It seemed that the family needed to choose a new successor. When he returned this time, he would have a good talk with the family head. Faced with the glares of the family elders, the young man wanted to cry, but had no tears. He knew that his status as the successor of the family would be lost soon. His heart was filled with grievances. The other party looked so young. How could he have imagined that the other party would be a king-level expert? If he had known that the other party was a king-level expert, would he have dared to provoke him? Roar. After being injured, the demonic Sound King beast roared, and a terrifying invisible shockwave surged toward Gray. Ripples appeared in the air as the shockwave passed through. The surrounding rocks and plants were all crushed by the invisible shockwave, forming an exaggerated shape of a horn. The sword-shaped silver weapon in Gray's hand was shrouded in black fog. Then a huge black tornado surged out. The invisible shockwave was instantly shattered. The huge black tornado swept towards the demonic Sound King beast. The demonic Sound King beast hurriedly dodged. However, the attack was comparable to a first metamorphosis king-level expert's attack. Its speed was naturally extremely fast. Before the demonic Sound King beast could dodge, it was already sucked into the black tornado. Puff, puff, puff. Flowers of blood bloomed on the demonic Sound King beast's body. The defense that was so strong that even a first-tier king-level expert couldn't damage, it was useless against the black fog tornado. Wounds continued to appear on its body. When the black fog disappeared, the demonic Sound King beast had dozens of wounds on its body. All of them were bleeding profusely. Roar! The demonic Sound King beast's eyes were red as it roared furiously. A terrifying invisible shockwave shook the surrounding trees and caused them to collapse. Some of the blood fiends hiding in the trees were directly turned into bloody paste by the shockwave. In response, Gray merely waved his sword calmly. The black fog was like a black wave descending from the sky. It destroyed the invisible shockwave and drowned the demonic Sound King beast. When the demonic Sound King beast reappeared, its body was badly mutilated. It was bleeding all over. It was extremely miserable. Woo! The demonic Sound King beast was finally frightened. Its body twisted, and it turned around to flee. Along the way, it crashed into trees and collapsed them. Knowing that it was no match, it chose to escape. Whoosh! Naturally, Gray wouldn't let it escape. He chased after it. However, after chasing for more than 10 minutes, the distance between them hadn't closed. Although his current speed had reached king level, the demonic Sound King beast speed was also at king level. It wasn't easy to close the distance. Whoosh! In front of Gray, a figure flashed. The King Claw beast was released by Gray. As a king-level blood fiend with strength and speed, the King Claw beast speed was at the top of all king-level blood fiends. It was inevitable that it would be faster than the demonic Sound King beast, which wasn't good at speed. Whoosh! The King Claw beast's body was like a ray of white light. In just a few seconds, it had caught up with the demonic Sound King beast. Its sharp claws slapped the demonic Sound King beast's head, sending it flying. Roar! The demonic Sound King beast got up and roared angrily. The invisible shockwave hit the King Claw beast. However, after a few scratches, the King Claw beast successfully withstood the attack. The King Claw beast wasn't good at defense, but it had Gray's metallization technique. After metallization, the King Claw beast withstood the demonic Sound King beast's invisible shockwave with only minor injuries. Puff! At this time, Gray finally caught up. The long sword wrapped in black fog sent the demonic Sound King beast flying. Puff, puff, puff. With the faster King Claw beast blocking its way, the demonic Sound King beast couldn't escape. After several slashes from Gray, the demonic Sound King beast finally stopped struggling and died completely. As expected of a king-level blood fiend that's good at defense. It's so hard to kill. Gray hurriedly went forward to collect the blood. This demonic Sound King beast was the hardest to kill among the 4 king-level blood fiends he had killed so far. After all, whether it was the Ice Soul King beast, Barnet Naeem, or the King Claw beast, none of them were king-level blood fiends that were good at defense. It wasn't difficult to kill them. Fortunately, his battle prowess was comparable to a first metamorphosis king-level blood fiend. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to kill it even after a few hours of battle. After extracting the blood, he used his ability to control corpses to control the demonic Sound King beast, and used his ability to reverse nurture to heal the King beast's injuries. Gray took out his map and checked his current location. He found that he was already quite far away from the area he had just been in. The chase had already taken him far away from the area he had been in. He didn't intend to go back and cause trouble for house stock. A pair of greenish-black wings sprouted from his back, and he began to fly around Sapphire Forest with a destination in mind. Gray didn't immediately use spatial transference to leave the Jewel Kingdom as he thought of something. During the previous 3 Kingdoms exchange, Gray had seen the Gemstone Queen's powerful defense after being petrified. He had the idea of obtaining the bloodline of a gemstone beast to see if he could fuse petrification with metallization. Originally, he had planned to stay in the Jewel Kingdom after the 3 Kingdoms exchanged to hunt for blood fiends. Unfortunately, he didn't dare to stay in the Jewel Kingdom after the Flaming Fong assassination. He immediately returned with the Purple Moon Kingdom's king-level blood fiends after the incident. Since he had arrived at the Gemstone Kingdom, he naturally had to kill a king-level blood beast, which was a gemstone beast king, to obtain its blood. A few days later, Gray landed in a small town near the forest to rest. It's too difficult to search for it without knowing where it is. In the past few days, he had searched Sapphire Forest and the surrounding forests, but he couldn't find any trace of the king beast. Even though he knew that gemstone-ranked blood fiends like to feed on gemstones and like to appear in places with gemstone veins, Gray didn't even know where there were gemstone veins. Gem veins were as valuable as magic ores, so the forces that mined them had to be extremely careful. They would never let outsiders know where their gem veins were. Therefore, the idea of using the gem veins to search for gem-sequenced blood beasts had been cut off from the very beginning. "Who are you people?" As he walked, Gray noticed that a few people were looking at him. That alerted him, and he couldn't help but ask in a cold voice. Seeing that they were discovered by Gray, a few people looked at each other. A man in battle armor, with a resolute face, came forward and asked respectfully, "May I ask if you're Lord Gray? If you're looking for Gray Fergus, that's me." Gray was puzzled. These people should be looking for him, but he didn't know why. After all, he didn't know many people in the Jewel Kingdom. After hearing Gray's name, the few people bowed respectfully to Gray and said, "Lord Gray, Princess Jelenway sent us to invite you to the royal city as a guest." Chapter 529. Her Highness Glenway. Gray's expression did not change, but he was even more puzzled. He did not find it strange that the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom knew about his identity. As the ruler of the Jewel Kingdom, the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom naturally had a strong intelligence network. It was not difficult for them to investigate his identity. However, what puzzled him was that he wasn't very familiar with Her Highness Glenway, so why would she suddenly think of inviting him? However, since she had already sent an invitation, he naturally had to go. She was a princess of a kingdom, and he was currently in the Jewel Kingdom. He had to gear some face. "Please lead the way," Gray said to the few of them. "Sir Gray, this way, please." Under the guidance of the few people, Gray entered a carriage with the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom. This was a very large and luxurious carriage. It had 4 wheels and was twice as wide as an ordinary carriage. The interior was luxuriously decorated, and it looked like a lounge. A 7-meter-long blood fiend was pulling the carriage. It should be a desolate-level blood fiend. Using a desolate-level blood fiend to replace a horse showed how serious Princess Glenway's invitation was. Sitting in a carriage pulled by a desolate-level blood fiend, Gray arrived at the capital of the Jewel Kingdom in 2 days. He then entered a huge mansion in the capital. Her Highness Glenway. As soon as Gray stepped down from the carriage, he saw the Jewel Queen and a group of people waiting for him. She was wearing a long blue dress with a slim waist. Her figure was graceful, and her waist was slender. Her hair was jet black and smooth, and under her jet black and smooth hair was an exquisite yet heroic face. In between her eyebrows, there was a red diamond-shaped gem that was very eye-catching. It added a sacred aura to her. "Sir Gray, this way, please." Under the guidance of the Jewel Queen, Gray entered a spacious hall. Gray noticed that other than the Jewel Queen, there was also an old man. The young maidservant served exquisite milk tea and pastries before leaving. Only the 3 of them were left in the room. The Jewel Queen spoke with a pleasant voice. "Sir Gray, I invited you to the capital to be a guest, and also to apologize to you on behalf of the Stock family." At this point, the old man who was also sitting in the room stood up and bowed to Gray. "Greetings, Sir Gray. I'm the head of House Stock. I am deeply apologetic for offending you. On behalf of House Stock, I offer my sincerest apologies." When he found out that his family had offended a king-level master, and not just any king-level master at that, he had not been able to sleep well for the past few nights. Angering a king-level expert and being targeted by a king-level expert was a very troublesome situation. King-level experts were powerful enough to transcend the laws of the world. The Four Kingdoms were extremely tolerant of them. As long as they didn't cross the line, the Four Kingdoms would turn a blind eye. In other words, the Jewel Kingdom's royal family wouldn't interfere as long as they didn't cross the line. While House Stock also had a king-level expert, they weren't as strong as the king-level expert. If the king-level expert made a move against House Stock, they definitely wouldn't be able to resist. He couldn't help but feel great pressure, so he immediately asked the royal family for help to ease the tension. With the Jewel Kingdom's intelligence network, they easily found out about Gray's identity. That was why the Jewel Queen invited Gray to the royal capital as a guest. "You're too polite, Your Highness. My conflict with the Stock family is only a small misunderstanding. I don't take it to heart." Gray smiled. He finally understood why the Jewel Queen had invited him. The only thing he didn't understand was why House Stock, a house with a king-level expert, would be so afraid of him that they would ask the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom to ease the tension. What he didn't know was that when he was fighting the demonic Sonar King Beast, House Stock sent a group of people to cause trouble for him and happened to see him fighting the demonic Sonar King Beast. At that time, he was fighting the demonic Sonar King Beast and focused all his attention on the King Beast. He didn't pay attention to his surroundings at all, so he didn't notice the group that came and left in a panic. "Thank you, Sir Gray, for your tolerance." Seeing that Gray didn't intend to pursue the matter with House Stock, the Jewel Queen thanked Gray and looked at him curiously. Now, she had reached the third stage of the Desolate stage. Compared to the time of the Three Kingdoms exchange, her strength had increased by 2 whole stages. In a short span of 2 years, she had advanced by 2 levels. This improvement was truly terrifying. Of course, the biggest credit was naturally that mysterious island. If it weren't for the fortuitous encounter on that island, her strength wouldn't have advanced so quickly. But what shocked her was the increase in his strength. If House Stock's judgment wasn't wrong, he might have already reached the second stage of the king level. Compared to the other party's increase in strength, her originally terrifying speed of improvement could only be considered ordinary. "Your Highness, Sir Gray, I'll take my leave then." After chatting for a while, House Stock stood up and left. Even though Gray didn't intend to pursue the matter, being in the same room as a suspected second-stage king-level expert made him feel like he was sitting on pins and needles. That was especially the case given that House Stock didn't have a good impression of him. So, after the matter was settled, he immediately left. After House Stock left, the Gemstone Queen sighed in the guest hall. "It's only been 2 years since the Three Kingdoms exchange. I didn't think that Sir Gray's strength would have increased to such a level. Francis, Lars, and I have been completely left behind by you. Your Highness Grinway thinks too highly of me. I'm only temporarily ahead because of my affinity physique. It's not my true strength." From what she said, Gray could tell that his second-stage king-level battle prowess had been exposed. "No, that's where you're wrong. Even though you're relying on your affinity physique, it's still part of your body. It's also a part of your strength." The Gemstone Queen shook her head. She could naturally guess that Gray's second-stage king-level battle prowess was due to his affinity physique and the combination of multiple bloodlines. However, the way she saw it, the affinity physique was something he was born with. The increase in strength from the affinity physique should also be part of his strength. "To be honest, I'm a little envious of your affinity physique. How about it? Are you interested in coming to the Jewel Kingdom?" The Gemstone Queen smiled faintly. She seemed to be joking, but she also seemed to be serious. "Your Highness Grinway must be joking." Gray smiled perfunctorily. There were cases in the history of the 4 great kingdoms where kingdoms poached each other's families. Duke Quirk, one of the Duke families of the Raging Flame Kingdom, had poached their families from the Crimson Kingdom. However, he had no intention of changing kingdoms. The Purple Moon Kingdom had taken good care of him. He wouldn't do such a thing no matter what. After that, Gray stayed in the Gemstone Queen's residence. After a few days of sightseeing in the Jewel Kingdom's imperial capital, he bid farewell and left. During the process, Gray had considered whether or not to purchase the Gemstone King Beast's blood from the Jewel Kingdom's royal family. However, he gave up in the end. The bloodlines he was compatible with were already enough. If he were to be compatible with the bloodline of the Gemstone King Beast, who knew what the Jewel Kingdom would think? Although he was already very strong, he still couldn't compete with a kingdom like the Jewel Kingdom. He couldn't let the other party discover his secret. He would have to think of a way to obtain the Gemstone King Beast's blood in the future. After declining the Gemstone Queen's offer to send him off with a carriage pulled by a desolate-level blood beast, Gray left the Jewel Kingdom and went to an uninhabited area. He used spatial teleportation and returned to the Fergus family. Between the mountains to the east of the Jewel Kingdom. Crack! There was a loud noise, as if something had been broken. A hillside that was originally covered with dense vegetation slowly became blurry and disappeared. Mountain rocks were gradually revealed. In the end, the hillside that was originally covered with dense vegetation became a stone slope. However, it wasn't an ordinary stone slope. The entire stone slope was made of a type of gemstone that could be used as a rune material. The entire stone slope was a rune gemstone. This exaggerated rune gemstone obviously had traces of man-made carvings. There were steps, reliefs, tombstones. This was a tomb. A few days later, a mercenary group discovered this place. They were ecstatic and wanted to search for treasures. However, just as they approached the tomb, people died mysteriously one after another. In the end, only one cowardly mercenary managed to escape. The news spread quickly. All the forces of the Jewel Kingdom sent people to investigate. Without exception, all of them died mysteriously without any wounds on their bodies. Later, a king-level expert from the Jewel Kingdom's royal family entered to investigate. However, he was seriously injured and retreated. A tomb appeared in the Jewel Kingdom. Even a king-level expert was seriously injured when he went to investigate. After receiving the news from the Nahum family, Gray, who had just returned from the Jewel Kingdom, was shocked. He had just returned from the Jewel Kingdom not long ago. He didn't expect something like this to happen in the Jewel Kingdom. An extraordinary tomb had appeared, and even a king-level expert was seriously injured when he went to investigate. So far, he had investigated 3 king-level tombs. However, none of the rune mechanisms were stronger than a king-level one. It wasn't that the owner of the tomb didn't want to set up a king-level rune mechanism. It was that they couldn't. A king-level rune mechanism required a high level of rune material and rune patterns. It was impossible to set up a king-level rune mechanism without either of the two. This time, the tomb discovered in the Jewel Kingdom had a king-level rune mechanism. One could imagine how extraordinary this tomb was. Chapter 530. I really want to go and check it out, but the Jewel Kingdom probably won't allow it. Unusual tomb chambers often represented extraordinary wealth. A tomb guarded by such a powerful rune mechanism would certainly contain extraordinary treasures. Among the funerary objects, there were likely to be many precious items. Gray wanted to go and check it out, but he knew that such an unusual tomb would be closely guarded by the Jewel Kingdom. They would definitely not allow people from other kingdoms to explore it. The royal family probably has more detailed information than I do. I'll go to the royal city and check it out. Gray used spatial teleportation to arrive at the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal city. You're here. It seems that you've also gotten the news. Gray met Sophia, Francis, and Hylia at a residence. Francis greeted Gray with a smile. He seemed to have expected Gray's arrival. Yes, I did hear some news, but it wasn't very detailed. That's why I'm here to check it out. Gray admitted generously. He had some guesses about this tomb chamber. It was likely that there was something he wanted inside, so he was eager to know the Jewel Kingdom's investigation of this tomb. He directly asked the question in his mind. Is this tomb a tomb from the Empire period? With the current rune level of the 4 kingdoms, It was very difficult to create a rune mechanism that could seriously injure even a king stage master. Therefore, he guessed that this tomb was most likely a tomb from an Empire period when the rune level was more prosperous. The Empire period was a period of unprecedented prosperity. Not only was the rune level more prosperous, but other aspects were also extremely prosperous. In such a tomb chamber, there was likely to be the key to upgrading his bloodline to magic light level. The blood of a magic light level blood fiend. This was not impossible. Generally speaking, the tombs of king stage masters were already built when they were alive. Many times, some king stage masters who felt that they were nearing the end of their lives would live in the tomb chamber until they died. For example, the Purple Thunder King, the owner of the Tomb of the Kings that Gray had investigated for the first time, had lived in the tomb before his death, and had finally welcomed the moment of his death. Under such circumstances, there would definitely be daily necessities left behind in the tomb. It wasn't impossible for there to be magic light, ranked blood fiend's blood. It is indeed a graveyard from the era of the Empire. Sophia nodded, confirming Gray's guess. She was wearing a long purple dress, and her sitting posture was elegant and natural. There was a slightly serious expression on her face. What is the progress of the Jewel Kingdom's investigation of this tomb? A thought flashed through Gray's mind as he asked. There's no progress at the moment. Sophia shook her head. There's no progress. Gray's expression changed to one of surprise. Although the king stage master sent by the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom to investigate was seriously injured, Gray did not think that the Jewel Kingdom could not do anything about this tomb. Although the power of a king stage rune mechanism was extremely strong, there was a thrice transformed king stage master in the Jewel Kingdom. How could the king stage master fail to destroy this rune mechanism? This rune mechanism is very unusual. Francis continued. At the center, the power of the attack is comparable to a thrice transformed king stage master's attack. Even Jennifer, a thrice transformed king stage master of the Jewel Kingdom, failed when she tried to force her way in. It's actually so powerful. Gray's face was full of shock. He realized that he had severely underestimated the power of the rune mechanism in this tomb. At first, he thought that the most powerful rune mechanism would be comparable to a thrice transformed king stage master. He did not expect it to be able to block the attack of a thrice transformed king stage master. How can it be so powerful? Were the rune mechanisms of the Empire so powerful? Gray had limited knowledge about the Empire. Although he knew that the rune mechanisms of the Empire were very powerful, he did not know how powerful they were. He did not expect to encounter one that was so powerful. No, even during the Empire, rune mechanisms that could be powerful to this extent were rare. Hylia shook her head gently. The identity of the tomb's owner was probably very unusual during the Empire. He was either a magic light level master or an important member of the Empire's royal family. A magic light level master or an important member of the Empire's royal family? Gray was shocked. If the tomb's owner was really one of these two identities, then his identity was really unusual. Needless to say, a magic light level master was one of the top masters during the Empire. His identity in the Empire was certainly unusual. As an important member of the Empire's royal family, this identity was also unusual. As a powerful country that once unified the entire world, one could imagine how powerful it was. An important figure of such a country naturally had an unusual identity. This is just our guess, but in our opinion, the possibility is very high. Francis said, if something happened to such a tomb, the wealth it contains is probably unimaginable. It's a pity that we don't have a chance to explore it. Gray sighed. No, it's not that we don't have a chance. In my opinion, the opportunity should come soon. If nothing unexpected happens, the Jewel Kingdom should invite the Purple Moon Kingdom to explore it together. Francis smiled mysteriously. Invite the Purple Moon Kingdom to explore it together? That's impossible, right? Even if the Jewel Kingdom did not have the ability to explore it, they would still seal it and slowly find a way to crack the rune mechanism. They wouldn't invite other kingdoms, right? Gray's face was full of doubts. Under normal circumstances, that would be the case. But have you ever thought about how the Flame Kingdom would react if they knew that such a tomb appeared in the Jewel Kingdom? Francis smiled meaningfully. The Flame Kingdom? Gray was enlightened. Indeed, with the Flame Kingdom's strong style, they would never not be tempted by such a precious tomb in the Jewel Kingdom. The Flame Kingdom would most likely invade the Jewel Kingdom because of this, and the Jewel Kingdom would most likely invite the Purple Moon Kingdom and the Flame Kingdom to explore the tomb together to fight against the Flame Kingdom. Knowing that there might be a turn for the better, Gray simply stayed in the Imperial City and prepared to follow the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family to explore the tomb together after they were invited. Asking the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom to bring him along was a small request that the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family would definitely agree to. Of course, the tomb this time was very dangerous. Even someone as strong as him might be in danger if he was not careful. Therefore, he would be extra careful and would never explore the tomb without absolute confidence. As expected, a few days later, the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family received an invitation from the Jewel Kingdom to explore the tomb together. The Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family immediately sent out a team. There were 5 king-level experts in the team, including Gray, Francis, Sophia, Hylia, and other younger members of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. There were also rune masters who were highly skilled in runes. One of them was Master Herman, whom Gray had met before. He was highly skilled in runes and was also invited by the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. Although the speed of the Desolate level blood beasts was not as fast as Gray's teleportation, it still took them 2 days to reach the Gemstone Kingdom's territory. After that, it took them another day to arrive at the location of the tomb and see the tomb. Although I've heard that it's extremely huge, I still can't help but feel shocked when I see it with my own eyes. Looking at the tomb, Sophia sighed. Gray and the others felt the same way. This was a huge black tomb. It was extremely huge, spanning more than 100 meters from left to right. It was like a small mountain. There were stone stairs, beautiful relief sculptures, and huge and towering tombstones. There were no traces of artificial inlays in the tomb. It was obvious that the entire tomb was carved out of an extremely huge rune material, black jade. Although black jade could only be considered as an ordinary rune material among rune materials, such a huge piece of it was still extremely valuable. Not to mention the precious items that might exist in the tomb, the entire tomb itself was already worth an astronomical amount of money. A cold snort attracted the attention of Gray and the other young people. Gray and the others looked over and saw that there were many tents not far from the tomb. In front of the tents, several young people were looking at them. Among these young men, one of them had golden hair that was as dazzling as the sun. His face was handsome, and there was not even a trace of imperfection on his face. However, at this moment, he was looking at Gray and the others with a cold gaze. This person was the second prince of the Flame Kingdom, Nicholas Blaze. When he saw Gray and the others looking at him, a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure spread out from the other party's body and landed on Gray and the others. This kind of pressure was actually coercion. Coercion? King-level coercion? Feeling the coercion from the other party, Gray and the others could not help but be shocked. However, they were the best of the younger generation after all. Even the weakest of them had reached the brute level, so they would not be forced to the ground by the other party's coercion. Even so, some of the young people of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family had sweat on their foreheads. This was a natural reaction of the body under the terrifying coercion. Only Gray, Sophia, Francis, and Hylia, who were all at the desolation level or above, could face such coercion without flinching. Of course, although they were not affected by the coercion, they were still shocked. Francis said with a slightly surprised expression, Nicholas Blaze is already a king-level master. As far as he knew, Nicholas Blaze was only a little over 26 years old. He did not expect him to be a king-level master. The age at which he became a king-level master was even younger than the youngest king-level master of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. Chapter 531. A 26-year-old king, Gray could not help but be slightly surprised. According to his own estimates, he should be able to become a king before the age of 25. However, this was something that could only be done by relying on the second metamorphosis state of his metamorphosis ability. It did not rely on his own talent. To a certain extent, this was a form of cheating. The other party naturally did not possess the metamorphosis ability, nor this second metamorphosis state. In other words, the fact that he could become a king at the age of 26 was entirely due to his own talent. This was somewhat terrifying. Even as an opponent, Gray could not help but feel admiration for the other party's talent. Among the younger generation of the Four Kingdoms, the other party's talent was unquestionably the best. The others, such as Francis, the Jewel Queen Glenwy Austin, and the Scarlet Prince Lyle Scarlet, were still somewhat lacking in talent compared to the other party. Niklos Blaze has actually reached king. In an open space slightly further away from the Flame Kingdom's tent area, there were many tents set up by the Scarlet Kingdom, which had arrived before the Purple Moon Kingdom. At the edge of the tents, there were several youths. One of them had scarlet hair, and his fists were clenched tightly. His expression was grave. He was the next successor of the Scarlet Kingdom, Lyle Scarlet. As the successor of a kingdom, he was often compared to the successors of the other three kingdoms. As an outstanding figure among his peers, he had never thought that he was inferior to anyone. But now, even if he did not want to admit it, he had to admit that Niklos Blaze, who was also a successor of a kingdom, had walked ahead of him. Niklos Blaze has also become a king. In an area not far from the Scarlet Kingdom's tent area, the Jewel Kingdom's tent area, the Jewel Queen looked at Niklos Blaze in surprise. However, her gaze quickly fell on Gray. It was indeed surprising that Niklos Blaze could become a king at such a young age. However, she knew that what was even more surprising was that the person in front of her was even younger than Niklos Blaze, but his combat power was already comparable to a second-tier king. Compared to him, even Niklos Blaze would pale in comparison. I really want to recruit such a genius into the Jewel Kingdom. I wasn't joking when I said those words the other day. I was serious. Unfortunately, the other party is doing well in the Purple Moon Kingdom and has no intention of moving to the Jewel Kingdom. Niklos Blaze has become a king? Naturally, the Purple Moon, Scarlet, and Gem Nation's king-class masters also felt this pressure, and they couldn't help but be shocked. They had all been on the path to becoming a king, and they knew very well how difficult it was to become one. Some people had even reached the end of their lifespan before they finally had the opportunity to break through. They could also feel that the other party had become a king warrior at the age of 26. This was a terrifying talent. Murderous intent flashed in their hearts, but they had a tacit understanding. Whether it was the Purple Moon Kingdom, the Scarlet Kingdom, or the Jewel Kingdom, none of them made a move to interrupt Niklos Blaze's pressure. They were planning to use Niklos Blaze to provoke the younger generation of their own kingdoms. In any case, with them watching, Niklos Blaze wouldn't have the chance to kill. Since that was the case, why not use this young king to provoke the younger generation of their own kingdoms? In the face of Niklos Blaze's pressure and provocation, they naturally had to respond. A silver spear covered with exquisite golden patterns appeared in Francis's hand. He activated it slightly, and a terrifying aura suddenly spread out, blocking the pressure. This made the young men of the Purple Moon Kingdom, who were sweating profusely, sigh in relief. Then, Francis looked at Niklos Blaze. Niklos Blaze, if you want to fight, I can accompany you. If you think that you can fight me with a silver weapon, you think too highly of yourself. Niklos Blaze shook his head with slight contempt. With a silver weapon, the other party could indeed unleash the power of a king, but there were many restrictions. It was impossible for him to fight against a king with this weapon. We'll only know after we fight. Francis naturally knew that the chances of winning against a king warrior with a silver weapon were not high. However, the other party had already provoked him, so it was impossible for him to not respond. In addition, now that there was a king from the Purple Moon Kingdom nearby, he wasn't worried that the other party would have a chance to kill him. He also wanted to use the pressure brought by the other party to increase the pressure on himself, so he was determined to fight. How about me? A voice sounded. It didn't come from where Gray and the rest were, but from the Scarlet Kingdom. The Scarlet Prince, Lars Scarlet, walked over with a blood-red longsword in his hand. The blood-red sword was full of strange black patterns, and the entire sword emitted a strange aura. Now this is interesting. Follow me if you want to fight. Niklos Blaze turned and rushed in a direction. Francis and Lars Scarlet followed, and so did Gray and the rest. They weren't the only ones. The younger generation of the other 3 kingdoms, as well as some of the kings from the 4 kingdoms, followed. Finally, the group came to an open space far away from the cemetery. This was a wasteland. The soil was dark brown, as if it could extinguish all life. Not a single blade of grass grew, and not a single plant could be seen. Make your move. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. In the wasteland, Niklos Blaze faced Francis and Lars Scarlet alone, a cold smile on his face. Oomph. Francis snorted. His blood beast ability was amplified by the magic weapon, and a spear pierced through. Roar. Suddenly, a huge purple flame behemoth appeared. It roared like a real behemoth, rolling up purple flames and attacking Niklos Blaze. The surrounding temperature suddenly rose. Even though they were far away, Gray and the rest couldn't help but feel a wave of heat. This was definitely a king's attack. Facing such an attack, Niklos Blaze's expression didn't change. A spear also appeared in his hand. The spear was golden and flashed under the sunlight. He stabbed it out calmly. Whoosh! Golden flames gathered and turned into a huge golden claw. Rolling up violent golden flames, it slammed towards the purple flame beast. Rumble! The golden flame claw collided with the purple flame beast. A terrifying shockwave spread out from the center of the collision. Sand and stones flew and dust flew. Huge craters appeared in the surrounding ground from the collision. At the center of the crater, the ground melted. Pooh! The two were locked in a stalemate for a moment. But in the end, the purple flame beast was crushed. Although the golden claw had mostly melted, it still attacked Francis and Lars Scarlet. The king-level combat power, plus the enhancement of the silver weapon, was obviously stronger than Francis's king-level combat power with the silver weapon. Crackle! Right at this moment, a gigantic crimson bird appeared. The bird was completely condensed from crimson lightning. Its wingspan reached a shocking 10 meters. It whistled as it flew out. This was Lars Scarlet's attack with the help of the silver weapon. Pooh! The broken golden claw was shattered by the wings of the crimson bird. After the crimson bird shattered the golden claw, it pounced on Niklos Blaze like a ferocious bird pouncing on its prey. Crackle! The terrifying thunder and lightning completely merged with Niklos Inferno's surroundings. Crimson lightning flickered continuously in this place, and the aura of destruction covered the sky and earth. In the end, a huge crater appeared there. However, Niklos Blaze's figure wasn't in the crater. Far away from the crater, Niklos Blaze's figure appeared. He didn't have any injuries from the lightning attack. As a king, Niklos Blaze's speed naturally reached the king level. And because of the blood arts he cultivated, his speed was at the top of the first stage of the king level. At the crucial moment, he relied on this speed to dodge the lightning bird's attack. Now, this is interesting. Seeing the two join forces and not only block his attack, they even had the power to counterattack. Niklos Blaze couldn't help but smirk. The next moment, he disappeared from where he was. When he reappeared, he was near Francis and Lars Scarlet. With a thrust of his spear, golden flames turned into a sea of fire that spread towards Francis and Lars Scarlet. Francis and Lars Scarlet hurriedly reacted. The purple flame beast and crimson lightning bird immediately extinguished the sea of fire formed by the golden flames. Their power spread behind the sea of fire, but after that, Niklos Blaze's figure was nowhere to be seen. Whoosh! Suddenly, a whistling sound came from behind Lars Scarlet. Lars Scarlet looked back and immediately saw a golden flaming claw slamming towards him. It was already extremely close to him. His expression was grave. His blood-red longsword was wrapped in blood-red lightning. With a slash, the blood-red lightning turned into a sea of lightning that met the golden flaming claw. Puff! The golden flaming claw quickly tore apart the sea of lightning and grabbed towards Lars Scarlet, who was behind the sea of lightning. Whoosh! Lightning wings sprouted from Lars Scarlet's back. His speed soared, and he barely dodged the golden flaming claw. The sea of lightning had bought him some time. In addition, the blood arts he cultivated were extremely fast. Now that he was at the third stage of the desolation level, his speed was comparable to that of the king. It was this speed that allowed him to dodge that attack. Roar! The attack on Lars Scarlet had been too fast. Francis hadn't been able to react in time to save him. Now that he finally reacted, the purple flame beast pounced towards Nicholas Blaze. Whoosh! Facing the incoming purple flame behemoth, Nicholas Blaze's figure flickered like a golden phantom with a golden spear in his hand, dodging the purple flame behemoth. The purple flame beast spread backwards, destroying everything in its path. Even the ground showed signs of melting. Finally, it spread 1,000 meters before dissipating. Chapter 532. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Terrifying loud noises rang out one after another. They were even more berserk than thunder, as though the heavens and earth were falling apart. Even Gray and the others, who were extremely far away, could not help but feel their ears swell. In the wasteland, the king-level powers had clashed more than 20 times. With the battlefield as the center, everything within a kilometer had been scorched. The violent power spread throughout the area. The ground was uneven and full of potholes. In some places, the soil had melted into magma under the high temperature. On one side were king-level fighters with silver weapons. On the other side, although they had not reached king level, they had reached the third level of the desolate level. There were two of them, and both of them had silver weapons. If they were alone, they would naturally not be a match. However, with the two of them working together, they could even put up a fight against a king-level fighter. After all, with silver weapons in hand, their battle strength was not inferior to a king-level fighter. With His Highness Francis and His Highness Lars working together, even if Nicholas Blaze is a king-level fighter, he will definitely not be a match. Nicholas Blaze is too arrogant. After becoming a king-level fighter, he dares to fight two highnesses alone. He's only in the lead for now. His Highness Francis and His Highness Lars will quickly become king-level fighters and catch up. Among the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom and the Scarlet Kingdom, some people were excited. It was obvious that they were optimistic about the current situation. If this continued, Francis and Lars Scarlet would definitely win. Only a few people, such as Gray, Sophia, and the Gemstone Queen, frowned slightly. Francis and Lars Scarlet are going to lose. Gray muttered to himself. Although Francis and Lars Scarlet had reached king level with their magic weapons, there was still a gap between them and a king-level fighter. King-level fighters were not only strong in their blood fiends, but also in their strength, speed, defense, and other physical attributes, as well as the amount of blood force. The first three could increase a king-level fighter's overall battle strength, while the latter could allow a king-level fighter to continuously erupt with king-level battle strength. The two of them working together had indeed narrowed the gap, but now it seemed that they were still not a match for Nicholas Blaze. If it was an ordinary king-class expert, they might have a chance of winning. However, Nicholas Blaze wasn't an ordinary king stage expert. The blood technique he cultivated could be said to be the best in the four great kingdoms. The power and speed of his blood beasts were the best among those of the same realm. After exchanging more than 20 blows, the two of them should have used up more than half of their blood energy. If they still couldn't take down Nicholas Blaze, then they were not far from defeat. Whoosh! After a few more exchanges, the golden flaming claw slapped towards Francis and Lars Scarlet. Roar! Crackle! Francis and Lars Scarlet attacked at the same time. The purple flame beast and the red lightning bird attacked, meeting the golden flame claw head-on. Rumble! The three collided and exploded. Dirt and stones were sent flying like cannonballs. The pothole in the center of the explosion melted the soil. But unexpectedly, the purple flame claw and the red lightning bird were only able to block the golden flame claw. They were unable to seize the opportunity to attack Nicholas Blaze. Big brother, they don't have enough blood energy. Seeing this, Sophia and Hilia's hearts skipped a beat. This wasn't good. Sure enough, in the following exchanges, Francis and Lars Scarlet's attacks became weaker and weaker. Bang bang. Finally, the power of their attacks could no longer block Niklos Blaze's attacks. They were sent flying by the aftershocks of the golden flame claw and fell to the ground in a sorry state. Fortunately, the armor they were wearing was made from the leather of king-class blood beasts. It helped them offset most of the impact, so they didn't suffer any serious injuries. The two of them got up with ugly expressions. Even after joining forces, they still lost. That's all there is to it. Looking at the two of them, Niklos Blaze had a mocking expression on his face. Francis and Lars Scarlet's faces alternated between green and red. Just now, after sending Francis and Lars Scarlet flying, it wasn't that Niklos Blaze hadn't thought of killing them. But at this moment, a faintly discernible and terrifying pressure locked onto him, making him not dare to do so. How about it? Anyone else wants to fight? Niklos Blaze's gaze first swept over the Gemstone Queen, then fell on Gray. His gaze was full of provocation. Gray was unmoved. He had no intention of accepting the challenge. Even if he defeated the other party here, he couldn't kill them. In his opinion, there was no need to fight. Of course, it wasn't that Francis and Lars Scarlet were reckless. Francis and Lars Scarlet's positions were different from Gray's. They were the successors of their respective kingdoms. Every word and action of theirs represented their respective kingdoms. They couldn't be timid here, so even if they knew their chances of winning weren't high, they would still accept the challenge. Gray didn't have such a burden. He was younger than Niklos Blaze and couldn't represent the entire Purple Moon Kingdom, so he had no intention of accepting the challenge. Gray Fergus, what? You don't even have the courage to fight. Seeing that Gray wasn't moved, Niklos Blaze directly called out Gray's name. Last time, on the endless ice plains, he had suffered a great loss at the hands of Gray. It could be said that it was the only defeat in his life. In his opinion, it was a great humiliation. Because of that, he had trained even harder. After 2 years of hard work, he had become a king. He desperately wanted to win it back. This was the reason he had used his aura to provoke Gray. Now that he saw that Gray wasn't accepting the challenge, he naturally wouldn't agree. He simply called out Gray's name to provoke him. When Niklos Blaze called out his name, almost everyone in the younger generation of the Four Kingdoms looked at Gray. Even many of the kings looked at Gray. He doesn't even dare to fight. What a coward. If I were him, I would find a rock and kill myself. The younger generation of the Flame Kingdom had provocative looks and words. Will Gray Fergus fight? If Gray Fergus fights, will he be able to win? On the other hand, the younger generation of the Three Kingdoms had some hope in their eyes. Now that the two people who could be called the spiritual pillars of the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom and the Scarlet Kingdom had been defeated, they felt very aggrieved. The Three Kingdoms urgently needed a victory to wash away this humiliation. However, they also felt that it was unlikely. After all, Niklos Blaze was now a king. Niklos Blaze picked the wrong opponent. Only the Gem Queen looked at Gray with anticipation. She was full of confidence in Gray. Nicholas Inferno was indeed exceptionally talented. He could be said to be the best in the younger generation of the Four Kingdoms, and could even be said to be the best in the Four Kingdoms in the past 1,000 years. Unfortunately, the person he provoked was a monster, an out-and-out monster. Since your highness wants to fight, I will naturally accompany you. Gray slowly walked towards the center of the field. Although he didn't want to accept the challenge, he had been specifically provoked. Naturally, he could not accept the challenge. There wasn't much benefit in accepting the challenge. At most, he could teach Niklos Blaze a lesson. However, if he didn't accept the challenge when he was clearly targeted by Niklos Blaze, not only would he not be able to teach the other party a lesson, but he would also have endless trouble in the future. In order to force him to accept the challenge, Niklos Blaze and even the younger generation of the Flame Kingdom would definitely continue to provoke him in the future. Since that was the case, he might as well accept the challenge and solve the problem once and for all. As for exposing his strength because of this, that was impossible. Although he was very surprised by Niklos Blaze's cultivation talent, He had the ability to transform. His strength had long surpassed Niklos Blaze's by a large margin. The current Niklos Blaze wasn't enough for him to expose his strength. Gray, seeing Gray walking towards the center of the field, Sophia and Francis called out worriedly. "Don't worry." Gray waved his hand slightly, indicating for the two to be at ease. "Be careful." Seeing that Gray had made up his mind, the two could only remind Gray to be careful. Although the two didn't know that Gray's current combat strength had reached the second stage of the King stage, they knew that Gray's defense was strong. They weren't too worried about Gray's safety. "Gray Fergus, make your move." Holding the golden spear tightly, Nikel's Rage Flame looked at Gray and said with a cold expression. He wasn't in a hurry to attack. He wanted to defeat his opponent head-on. Only in this way could he wash away the humiliation of his previous defeat. "Then I'll make my move." The corner of Gray's mouth raised slightly. Whoosh! In the next moment, the King Claw beast's huge body, which was more than 10 meters long, appeared in front of him. As soon as it appeared, its body turned into metal, and its surface was covered with a layer of silver luster. It quickly pounced on Niklos Blaze. King Claw Beast. Niklos Blaze's expression froze. As a member of the royal family, he was very knowledgeable and naturally recognized the King Claw Beast. He had already guessed that Gray had the ability to control corpses the last time in the Endless Ice Field. However, when he saw the King Claw Beast, he couldn't help but be shocked. The King Claw Beast was a physical king-level blood fiend. Unlike Francis and Lars Scarlet, it had the combat strength of a genuine king-level blood fiend. He didn't expect his opponent to be able to control one. Is it the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom? Yes, it must be the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom who hunted it for him. The royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom really spared no effort in cultivating him. He snorted in his heart, and a golden spear appeared in his hand. Golden flames wrapped around the spear, increasing its power. The spear pierced through the air, and suddenly, an extremely condensed golden flame column, like a golden light beam, attacked the King Claw Beast with terrifying heat. Puff! The terrifying flames spread out for more than 1,000 meters, destroying everything in its path and leaving traces of melting on the ground. However, there was no sign of the King Claw Beast. When the golden flame column attacked, the King Claw Beast, which was at the peak of the first tier of king level, exploded with terrifying speed. Its huge body flashed like a white light and dodged the golden flame column. Chapter 533. Poof, poof, poof. Several golden flame pillars attacked the King Claw Beast in succession, but the King Claw Beast dodged them all with its speed. Whoosh! The King Claw Beast quickly closed the distance between Niklos Blaze and Niklos Blaze. Finally, it was right in front of Niklos Blaze. Its gleaming claws brought about a strong gust of wind as it swiftly clawed at Niklos Blaze. Umph! Niklos Blaze snorted coldly. His spear was wrapped in an extremely concentrated golden flame. He swept the spear horizontally to meet the giant claw beast. Clang! The sound of metal clashing was heard. Then, the King Claw Beast's huge body was seen retreating. The King Claw Beast was a king-level blood fiend with strength and speed. Its destructive power was comparable to that of an ordinary king-level blood fiend. However, Niklos Blaze's blood fiend ability was stronger than that of an ordinary king-level blood fiend. With the enhancement of the silver weapon, its power was even more terrifying. Therefore, it was able to force the King Claw Beast to retreat with one blow. Niklos Blaze did not stop after defeating the King Claw Beast with one blow. His speed was at the top of the first tier of king-level blood fiends. He caught up with the King Claw Beast and bounced up. The concentrated golden flame on the spear burned fiercely as it pierced the King Claw Beast's eyes. Knowing the ability to control corpses, he knew that the weakness of the ability was the head. Clang! The King Claw Beast raised its claw to block the spear, but could not help but be forced to retreat again. Bang! Niklos Blaze stomped on the air. He stayed in the air and chased after the King Claw Beast. The spear wrapped in golden flames once again pierced the King Claw Beast's eyes. Poof! The king claw beast could not dodge in time. It could only tilt its head to avoid the vital point of its eyes. The spear pierced its head. Its huge body was sent flying, and a clear burn mark appeared on its head near its eyes. The metallization has greatly enhanced the king claw beast's defense. Seeing the effect of this attack, Niklos Blaze raised his eyebrows slightly. With the enhancement of the Bloodfiend ability and the silver weapon, the power of his attack was extremely close to that of a second-tier Desolate level. Even so, the injury caused was only ordinary. This was obviously not the King Claw Beast's own defense, but the defense that Grey Fergus gave to the King Claw Beast through metallization. Grey Fergus, I'm surprised that you have a King Clawed Beast. However, this King Clawed Beast is not enough to stop me. Ignoring the King Claw Beast that was sent flying, Niklos Blaze's speed soared to the maximum as he charged straight at Grey. Behind him, the King Claw Beast got up and chased after him, but its speed was not much different from his. Facing him, who was running wildly, it was difficult to close the distance. Be careful! Someone from a younger generation of the Three Kingdoms cried out in alarm, breaking out in cold sweat for Grey. Without the obstruction of the King-Clawed Beasts, Grey would have to face Nicholas Inferno, King-class combat power head-on. They did not know if Grey had a silver-grade weapon. Even if Grey did have a silver-grade weapon, in their opinion, it would be difficult to stop him. Grey Fergus has lost, so what if he can control the King Claw Beast? He is still no match for His Highness Niklos. The younger generation of the Flame Kingdom was proud. Seeing that Grey had released a King-Clawed Beast to fight, they were shocked. They didn't expect Grey to have such a trick up his sleeve. However, when they saw that Niklos Blaze had repelled the King-Clawed Beast and was charging straight at Grey, they were finally relieved. The victory was already set. Very strong indeed. Facing the rapidly approaching Niklos Blaze, Grey's expression was calm as he commented. He didn't retreat or pull out the sword at his waist. However, in front of him, a huge blood beast covered in black fur appeared. The gigantic blood beast was 12 meters long. Just by standing on all fours, its terrifying body gave off a tremendous amount of pressure. Its identity as a king-level blood beast was undoubtedly revealed. This was the second blood beast that Grey had killed, the king-level blood beast, the demonic Sound King Beast. Demonic Note King Beast. This is the King Beast, Demonic Note King Beast. A second King Blood Beast. He has a second King Blood Beast under his control. At this moment, the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom, the Scarlet Kingdom, the Jewel Kingdom, and the Flame Kingdom couldn't help but exclaim. Their faces were full of astonishment. The fact that Grey was able to control a king-level blood fiend was already shocking enough. They did not expect Grey to be able to control a second king-level blood fiend. Only the Jewel Queen, Glenwy Austin, wasn't surprised. She had already guessed it. After all, she knew that the King Blood Beast that Grey had killed in the Jewel Kingdom was the Demonic Note King Beast. The ability to control corpses is indeed a heaven-defying ability. Even the King-class experts of the four great kingdoms couldn't help but change their expressions as they were shocked. If Niklos Blaze had shown a powerful cultivation talent, then Grey had shown a powerful ability to control blood beasts. The two had different inclinations, but they were both extremely powerful, far surpassing the average King Blood Beast. Woo! As soon as it appeared, the Demonic Note King Beast roared. An invisible sound wave spread in the direction of Niklos Blaze. The ground was shaken by the sound wave, and a layer was forcibly shaved off. The invisible sound wave swept over, shattering everything in its path. Whoosh! Niklos Blaze's expression changed. The handle of his black spear stabbed into the ground. A golden wall of flames appeared in front of him, blocking the invisible sound wave that swept over. Pop! The invisible sound wave rippled over the golden wall of flames. The golden wall of flames trembled slightly, but it didn't collapse. It blocked the invisible sound wave. After blocking the invisible sound wave, Niklos Blaze's expression didn't relax at all. Instead, it turned into a completely dignified expression. The second physical type, King Bloodbeast. Even someone as strong as him couldn't help but feel troubled when facing two physical type King Bloodbeasts. Moreover, as far as he knew, these two King Bloodbeasts weren't ordinary physical type King Bloodbeasts. They were physical type King Bloodbeasts that had undergone metallization and had a terrifying increase in defense. Whoosh! Niklos Blaze didn't have much time to think. A whistling sound came from behind Niklos Blaze. The King Clawed Beast had taken advantage of the time when Niklos Blaze was blocking the invisible sound wave to approach Niklos Blaze. Its huge claws were clawing at Niklos Blaze. The King Clawed Beast had just relied on its strong defense to forcefully resist the invisible sound wave. Whoosh! Niklos Blaze's figure flashed and dodged the claw. Then, golden flames wrapped around his long spear, and he thrust it toward the King Clawed Beast's eyes. But at this moment, whoo, another invisible sound wave came. Whether it was Niklos Blaze or the King Clawed Beast, they were all enveloped by the invisible sound wave. Bang! As expected, the King Clawed Beast was sent flying by the sound wave. Niklos Blaze didn't have time to defend himself. He was also sent flying by the invisible sound wave. Puff! Niklos Blaze's battle armor was made from the leather of a defense-type King Bloodbeast. It had blocked most of the impact for him. He was only slightly shaken. However, his face had been scraped by the invisible sound wave. Suddenly, a scratch appeared on his face and a drop of blood seeped out. Gray Fergus, feeling the burning pain on his face, Niklos Blaze turned over and got up. His eyes were malicious. Although it was only a scratch, he was still injured. Compared to Gray, who was standing in the distance with his clothes in a mess and looked like an outsider, he suddenly felt a strong sense of humiliation. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of drumming footsteps was approaching. It was the demonic Sound King Beast. Niklos Blaze's face flashed with anger. The golden flames on his long spear turned into a giant golden claw. He slapped the claw toward the demonic Sound King Beast. Boom! The claw splashed the soil on the ground. A huge lava pit appeared. In the center of the pit, the soil melted into magma. The demonic Sound King Beast figure was in the center of the magma. Splash! The sound of flowing water was heard. The demonic Sound King Beast turned over and got up from the magma. It jumped out of the huge pit and continued to rush toward Niklos Blaze. There was no burn on the opponent's metallized body. Even its hair was still intact. Under his attack, there was no wound left. One of the physical abilities of the demonic Sound King Beast was its defense. Before metallization, its defense had reached the peak of the first level. After metallization, its defense had increased even more. Therefore, when facing Niklos Blaze's attack, which was close to the second level of the king level, there was no wound on its body. Scram! Niklos Blaze was furious that he was unable to inflict any injuries on him. The golden flames on his long spear turned into a condensed golden flame pillar that rushed out and hit the demonic Sound King Beast. Finally, the demonic Sound King Beast was sent flying. At this time, the King Claw Beast had already appeared in front of him and slapped his back with its claw. Boom! He dodged sideways and avoided the claw in an extremely embarrassing manner. Will His Highness Niklos be defeated? No, that's impossible. His Highness Niklos is already a king-level warrior. Seeing Niklos Blaze dodging the King Claw Beast attack, the young people of the Flame Kingdom could not help but change their expressions. Obviously, Niklos Blaze was at a disadvantage when facing the siege of two physical king-level blood beasts. That was indeed the case. Under the siege of two king-level blood fiends, Nicholas Inferno was obviously having trouble dealing with them. Boom! Finally, the King Claw Beast seized the opportunity and slapped Niklos Blaze's body with its claw. This was a king-level attack. It was not scattered like the demonic Sound King Beast Soundwave attack. Instead, it was extremely condensed. Under this attack, even Niklos Blaze, who was wearing combat armor and whose power had been greatly weakened, could not help but feel a strong impact. His body was injured, and he could not get up immediately. Boom, boom, boom. At this time, The demonic Sound King beast had already rushed toward Niklos Blaze. Its huge hoof was raised like a giant pillar and trampled down on Niklos Blaze. Whoosh! Suddenly, a long spear wrapped in golden flames appeared and stabbed the demonic Sound King beast. The huge body of the demonic Sound King beast flew backward at an extremely fast speed as if it was weightless. It flew backward for more than 1,000 meters. An old man appeared beside Niklos Blaze. He was holding the spear that had just stabbed the demonic Sound King beast. This old man was one of the king-level experts of the Flame Kingdom. Chapter 534. He sent the demonic Sound King beast flying more than 1,000 meters with just one hit. Gray's pupils shrank. The demonic Sound King beast weighed dozens of tons. To be able to send a beast that weighed dozens of tons flying more than 1,000 meters with just one hit, one could only imagine the power of the spear. Such destructive power was definitely not from an ordinary king tier. The other party's combat strength had at least undergone one metamorphosis. Gray even suspected that it was a king tier warrior who had undergone 2 metamorphoses. Come back. There was nothing else to say. Gray summoned the King Claw beast and the demonic Sound King beast back. With such a king-tier powerhouse blocking Niklos Blaze's side, with the strength of the 2 king-tier blood beasts, it was impossible for them to hurt Niklos Blaze. This was also the reason why Gray did not intend to accept the challenge at the beginning. Although he could teach Niklos Blaze a lesson, he did not have the opportunity to kill him. If Niklos Blaze had not mentioned him by name, the other party would have continued to provoke him if he did not accept the challenge. In order to avoid endless trouble in the future, he finally decided to take action. It only suffered minor injuries. Seeing the demonic Sound King beast return, Gray was slightly surprised. He originally thought that the demonic Sound King beast would be seriously injured this time. He did not expect that the demonic Sound King beast would only suffer minor injuries from the previous hit. Although he knew that the demonic Sound King beast defense was very strong after being metallized, even stronger than his own defense, he did not expect it to only suffer minor injuries under such an attack. It was obvious that he had underestimated the demonic Sound King beast defense. After storing the 2 king-tier blood beasts into the purple ring, Gray did not hesitate to retreat in the direction of the Purple Moon Kingdom. He had no intention of fighting the old man in front of him. Corpse control ability. Seeing Gray retreat, the old man's eyes narrowed slightly, but he did not stop him. It was not that he did not want to stop them, but at this time, there were already several vague, murderous intents shrouding him from the Purple Moon Kingdom. It was one thing for him to defeat the demonic Note King beast and save Niklos Blaze, but if he dared to attack Gray, the Purple Moon Kingdom's king-class powerhouses would definitely not sit back and do nothing. Gray retreated to the Purple Moon Kingdom's team, and the battle between the younger generation of the 4 kingdoms came to an end. The youths of the 3 kingdoms all looked at Gray, intentionally or otherwise, with a hint of surprise and reverence in their eyes. It's not King Tier, but it's better than King Tier. Francis, Lars Scarlet, Sophia, and the others couldn't help but mutter softly. Gray wasn't a king, but he was able to defeat Niklos Blaze, who was a king, with his ability to control corpses. From their point of view, although Gray was not a king-stage martial artist, he was stronger than one. His Highness Niklos was really defeated. The only ones who couldn't accept it were the younger generation of the Flame Kingdom. They found it hard to accept that Niklos Blaze, who was a king, had been defeated. The Purple Moon Kingdom pitched their tents not far from the Jewel Kingdom and the Scarlet Kingdom. The attention of the 4 kingdoms couldn't help but once again turn to this graveyard from the Empire era. Gray and the other youths approached the graveyard and carefully examined it. There were dozens of corpses in the graveyard. Some of them were dressed as mercenaries, while others were dressed as nobles. They lay quietly on the ground with their bodies in various postures. Those were the postures they were in before they died. There were no wounds on their bodies, and there was no trace of injury, but they were strangely dead. How were they killed? Could it be a soul attack? Hylia asked with a serious expression. It's possible, Francis said solemnly. A soul attack. Gray's expression also turned serious. If it was a soul attack, then he had to be careful. Although his physical body was strong, he was only at the third level of the desolation stage. The strength of his soul was limited and couldn't be compared to a king's stage. A careless mistake could lead to an accident. It's not a soul attack. It's a type of poisonous gas. The Gemstone Queen walked over and shook her head. Poisonous gas? Gray and the others looked at the Gemstone Queen in surprise. Yes, a king stage expert from the Jewel Kingdom once carried out a corpse for examination. He found that the internal organs and even the bones of the corpse were black. It was obvious that the corpse was poisoned. The Gemstone Queen explained, "This is a colorless and odorless poison produced by formation patterns. It's extremely difficult to guard against. Without a king stage expert, it's impossible to resist the poison's attack." The Flame Kingdom is making a move. Suddenly, Gray and the others noticed that a dozen people from the Flame Kingdom were walking towards the graveyard. The leader was an old man. He was tall and wasn't small, but his back was extremely straight. He exuded a strong sense of majesty. This was the king stage expert of the Flame Kingdom, Blair Blaze, who had gone through 3 metamorphoses. The dozen people walked to the front of the graveyard. The others stopped, but Blair Blaze didn't. He continued walking toward the graveyard and finally stepped onto the graveyard steps. Hum hum. After Blair Blaze stepped onto the steps, the entire surface of the graveyard was suddenly covered in dense green patterns. They were densely packed and extremely complicated, like countless green ants. Clearly, the formation pattern's power had been activated. However, Blair Blaze wasn't affected. He stepped over the corpses around the steps and walked up step by step. The colorless and odorless poison didn't seem to affect him at all. Gray and the others weren't surprised. They watched quietly. There must be more rune mechanisms in this graveyard. As expected, after Blair Blaze walked for a while, something changed. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Earthen yellow spears appeared out of thin air, whistling through the air as they attacked Blair Blaze. At this moment, Blair Blaze's figure became erratic. Sometimes left, sometimes right, he moved forward irregularly. But it was precisely this irregularly moving method that allowed him to avoid the earthen yellow spears one after another. The yellow spears brushed past him and hit the steps beside him. The power was absorbed by the formation pattern on the steps. He continued forward without being affected. After walking for a while, the yellow spears disappeared, but a new attack appeared. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Huge black shadow tentacles grew out of the black jade graveyard. Accompanied by a strong wind, they whipped towards Blair Blaze. Blair Blaze still used the same movement method as before. The shadow tentacles whizzed past quickly, but they couldn't touch his body. He was like a shadow without a physical body. No matter how the shadow tentacles attacked, it was useless. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Blair Blaze continued forward. The shadow tentacles disappeared, and in their place appeared sharp metal blades, formed from metal elemental energy. Knives, swords, axes, spears. There were all kinds of weapons, and each one of them was extremely powerful. It was as if silver weapons were being wielded in the hands of a king-level powerhouse as they attacked Burrell's raging flames. Just looking at it from afar, Gray and the others felt their hair stand on end. Blair Blaze used the same method of movement as before. He weaved through the gaps between the weapons and passed through the countless attacks. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The metal blades disappeared, and a large number of wind blades appeared. Each wind blade was dark green, as if they had been polished from dark green jade. They attacked Blair Blaze with a speed that surpassed that of an ordinary king's attack. The power of each wind blade surpassed that of an ordinary king. Each wind blade was enough to seriously injure or even kill an ordinary king. Most importantly, their speed was terrifying. In the blink of an eye, they were right in front of Blair Blaze. In the face of such an attack, even Blair Blaze would find it difficult to dodge with his speed. As expected, this time, Blair Blaze did not dodge. Whoosh! Golden flames spread out in front of him, sweeping forward like a golden wave. Kacha, kacha, kacha! All the wind blades attacking him were destroyed by the golden flames. He walked forward calmly, step by step. He was even calmer than before. No wonder he was a peak king who had gone through 3 metamorphoses. As he moved forward, Blair Blaze left the stone staircase and stepped onto a platform. He was very close to the center of the cemetery. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this time, a new attack appeared. It was a cone-shaped ice blade. It carried an extreme chill as it attacked Blair Blaze. But because it was too fast, Gray and the others could only see a white shadow. Feeling the chill from the ice blade, Gray and the others felt their hair stand on end. They were so far away, yet such a terrifying chill was seeping in. They did not doubt that each of these ice blades was enough to kill them. Whoosh! The ice blades attacked. In front of Blair Blaze, the golden flames rippled out again. The ice blades attacking him were all melted by the golden flames. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. He walked forward, getting closer and closer to the center of the cemetery. The ice blades kept attacking him, but they were all melted by his golden flames. He has already surpassed the distance Lady Jennifer reached. Can he break through? The gemstone princess clenched her fists and said. At some point, many kings had appeared around the cemetery. They were all watching Blair Blaze's actions. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Wave after wave of ice blades attacked Blair Blaze, but they were all blocked by Blair Blaze's golden flames. Blair Blaze was very close to the center of the cemetery, and the ice blades attacking him became denser. Crack! Suddenly, there was the sound of ice forming. Everyone saw an ice blade break through Blair Blaze's golden flames and hit Blair Blaze. Blair Blaze's body was covered in ice. Although Brel Raging Flame immediately used his fire ability to melt the ice, this caused even more ice to envelop him. Bang! 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 Multiple bursts of ice spread across his body, and he was sent flying out of the graveyard, smashing into the ground outside the graveyard. Blair Blaze, who had evolved 3 times, tried to break into the cemetery, but he failed. Chapter 535. Whoosh! The flames spread, and the ice around Blair Blaze disappeared. Blair Blaze's figure was revealed again, but his face was a little pale. He must have been injured by the ice. The king-class masters of the Flame Kingdom quickly surrounded him, guarding against the king-class masters of the other 3 kingdoms. The eyes of the 3 king-class masters flashed slightly. They felt that Blair Blaze's injuries weren't serious, so they didn't make a move in the end. Even Blair Blaze failed. Looks like it's impossible to force our way in. Gray and the others, who had watched the entire process, looked at each other. Although they didn't have a good impression of the Flame Kingdom, they had to admit that Blair Blaze was the strongest fighter in the 4 kingdoms. Since he had failed to force his way into the tomb, it was impossible for the rest of the 4 kingdoms to succeed. As expected, the 4 kingdoms gave up on the idea of forcing their way in and began to send their own rune masters to try to crack the mechanism. 5 masters, how is it? Can you crack the mechanism of this tomb? In the Purple Moon Kingdom's team, the 5 rune masters investigated for a few hours. They even sent king-class masters to force their way in and activate the patterns of the mechanism for observation. Finally, they stopped temporarily. Seeing the excitement on the faces of the 5 masters, it was obvious that such a complex and powerful mechanism had made them excited. The Purple Moon Kingdom's team, who had been waiting, stepped forward. Francis asked politely. The 5 rune masters in front of him were the top rune masters. They were the 5 people with the highest attainments in runes in the Purple Moon Kingdom. They could be called the treasures of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Facing them, even Francis, who was the successor of the Purple Moon Kingdom, had to be extremely respectful. It's very difficult. The rune level of this mechanism is far beyond the current rune level of the 4 kingdoms, Master Herman said. He was an old man with a face full of age spots, sparse hair, and a hunched back. How confident are the 5 masters? A king-class master asked, his voice still polite. Even if the 5 of us work together, we have less than a 20% chance of cracking it, and it will take a very long time. Another old man among the 5 said, How long will it take? The king-class master from before asked. A few months at least, more than a year at most. The old man replied. That long. Hearing this, Gray and the others frowned. The king-class masters with the responsibility of guarding the kingdom couldn't leave the kingdom for a long time. Even Gray and the others had their own matters. They couldn't stay in one place for so long. Of the rune masters of the three kingdoms, for several days in a row, the people of the four nations were frowning. It was impossible for the four kingdoms to spend so much time here to crack the rune mechanism, but they were unwilling to give up just like that. There must be something precious in this tomb. Even for the royal families of the four kingdoms, it was a huge fortune. It would be a pity to give it up just like that. The four kingdoms are preparing to work together. On this day, Francis said with a slightly solemn expression, "The four kingdoms are preparing to work together?" Hearing this news, Gray was slightly surprised. The Purple Moon, Scarlet, and Gem kingdoms had a grudge against the Flame Kingdom. It had been hundreds of years. Who would have thought that they would work together one day? Working together is only limited to cracking the rune mechanism. There is no other way. Francis shook his head. The four kingdoms can't waste time here, but they can't give up just like that. The only way is for the four kingdoms to work together. Gather the rune masters of the four kingdoms to crack the rune mechanism. The rune masters of the four kingdoms started to crack the rune mechanism together. More than 20 rune masters of the four kingdoms could be seen from time to time. They discussed and debated with each other. It was as if they were trying to overcome a technical obstacle. With more than 20 rune masters of the four kingdoms working together, not only did it increase the probability of cracking the rune mechanism, it also greatly reduced the time needed. A week later, Kaka. More than 20 rune masters worked together. Rune stones carved with rune patterns were embedded in the outer area of the tomb. Green rune patterns immediately appeared and flickered. It was as if there was a short circuit. It flickered irregularly, accompanied by cracking sounds. Finally, the green rune patterns completely disappeared. This indicated that the outermost layer of the rune mechanism, which was the one that released the colorless and odorless poison gas, had been successfully cracked. This also gave the four kingdoms hope of cracking the rune mechanism. They couldn't help but look forward to it. Master Herman, at this speed, how long will it take to crack all the rune mechanisms in the tomb? Gray found Master Herman and asked politely, "The deeper we go, the more complicated the rune mechanism will be. It will take at least 1 to 2 months to completely crack it." Master Herman replied. After knowing that it would take at least 1 to 2 months to crack the rune mechanism, Gray had the idea of leaving the tomb and going to other places to take a look. Gray was still thinking about the gemstone king beast blood in the Jewel Kingdom. He wondered if he could find a gemstone king beast to kill during this 1 month. After making up his mind, Gray bid farewell to Sophia, Francis, and the others. He then quietly left the Purple Moon Kingdom's team. Gray Fergus has left. As the person that the Flame Kingdom wanted to get rid of, the Flame Kingdom had naturally been paying attention to Gray. Although Gray had left quietly, Gray's departure was soon noticed by the Flame Kingdom. This is a chance to get rid of him. After knowing that Gray had left, Niklos Blaze's eyes were filled with murderous intent. After that, a hidden king-level powerhouse in the Flame Kingdom also quietly disappeared. After leaving the tomb, Gray searched aimlessly in the nearby forest. After a few days, he appeared in a mountain range a few hundred miles away from the tomb. The mountains here were mostly made of stones and sparse vegetation. There were very few tall trees, and most of them were short shrubs. Gray was flying in the air. With a glance, he could see the entire mountain. Because of this, the speed of his search was extremely fast. The sun shone on the ground, and the sky was clear. Suddenly, Gray saw a dazzling red light from a mountain. He couldn't help but fly over. Gemstone mine. As he approached the red light, Gray saw the object emitting the red light. It was a red gemstone mine about the size of an adult's palm. The red light was the reflection of the gemstone mine under the sunlight. He looked around and found that this place was on the side of the mountain. It was slightly sunken, and there were obvious traces of excavation. This gemstone was not originally on the surface and had been dug out. This was dug out by a blood fiend. After carefully examining the traces, Gray found that there were some huge hoof marks left behind at the scene. This pit should have been dug out by a blood fiend with huge hooves. Could it be a gemstone beast? Gray's eyes lit up. A blood fiend with hooves was very consistent with a gemstone beast. In addition, there was a gemstone mine in the area that was dug out, and the gemstone mine was the food of gemstone blood fiends. Gray felt that the possibility of it being a gemstone beast was very high. Chapter 536. Judging from this mark, it must have left for quite some time. I can't track it down based on its scent. Gray observed carefully and realized that the marks were old and blurred. It must have been here for quite some time. He gave up on the idea of using the hunter's potion to track it down. However, this blood fiend's area of activity should be nearby. It was obvious that this area was rich in gemstones, and gemstone beasts fed on gemstones. Therefore, this blood fiend's area of activity should be nearby. He started a search around the mountain, where he found the traces of the blood fiend. After that, he once again found several traces left behind by blood beasts with hoofs digging for gems, confirming his guess. The traces he saw at first were indeed left behind by a blood beast with a gem beast sequence, and the other party's range of activity was indeed nearby. This place has been taken over by another force. After going over a few mountains, Gray found a stone house built on the side of one of the mountains. He could hear the sound of mining. It should be a force in the Jewel Kingdom that was mining gemstones. He did not contact this force to ask for information. No force would want their gemstone mine to be known. If Gray went to ask for information, he would be in trouble. Although he wasn't afraid of this kind of trouble with his current strength, it was best to avoid it as much as possible. Gray directly avoided it. After going over a few mountains, Gray was dozens of miles away from the place where he first found the traces of the blood fiend. Suddenly, he saw a moving figure on the mountainside. It was a colorful figure. It was at the mountainside of a mountain and was digging at the rocks. The sunlight shone on its body, and it was shining with a colorful light. It's a gemstone beast. Gray got closer and saw the figure's appearance clearly. The figure was covered in scales of different colors. Some were red, some were blue, some were yellow, some were green, and some were black. It looked like it was pieced together by pieces of gemstones. Its forelegs were extremely thick, and at the end of them were hooves that looked like jewels. With such external characteristics, it was undoubtedly a gem beast ranked blood beast. It's about 7 to 8 meters long. It's not a gem king beast, but a gem desolate beast. The only thing that Gray regretted was that based on its size, it was definitely not a king-level blood fiend. Instead, it was a desolate-level blood fiend. Now that he had reached the 3rd level of desolation, the blood of desolation-level blood fiends were of no use to him, except for a few extremely special ones. Moreover, he wasn't sure if the gem beast sequence blood beast petrification ability was a permanent ability or a temporary ability. If it was a permanent ability, then it would be fine. Although the earth element ability of the gem beast was not very useful to him, the gem transformation ability was useful to him. Therefore, it was not a loss to use the ability to transform once. What he was afraid of was that it would only be a stage-level ability. Gemstone Transformation's strengthening effect was only at the desolate level stage. It would not have any strengthening effect on him, who was already at the 3rd stage of the desolate level. Let's kill it first. Although he was a little disappointed that it wasn't a Gemstone King beast, it was still the first Gemstone beast-ranked blood fiend he had found. Naturally, he wouldn't let it go so easily. Gray, who was flying in the air, quickly descended and brazenly attacked the gem desolate beast. Swish, swish, swish. Wind blades appeared, whistling as they slashed towards the gemstone desolate beast. Each blade was like a demonic sword. Roar! The gem dire beast noticed Gray's attack, and a halo of light spread out from its scales. Apparently, it had used the gem dire beast to strengthen its defense. At the same time, the gem beast roared, and an earthy yellow light blade soared into the sky, meeting the wind blades one after another. Poof, poof, poof. Now that Gray had reached the 3rd level of the desolated level, even if he used a single type of ability, the power would still be extremely terrifying. The earthen yellow light blade was immediately shattered, and the wind blade landed on the gemstone beast's body, easily slicing open the gemstone beast's body. After the gemstone beast had been petrified, its defense had reached the highest level among all the desolate level blood beasts. Large wounds were left on its body. When all the wind blades disappeared, the gem beast was already lying in a pool of blood. Although he wasn't dead yet, he wasn't far from death. Gray descended and ended the gemstone beast's life, collecting its blood. You've been searching for a few days, and you're looking for this gemstone beast? Suddenly, a voice rang out, and a figure walked out from behind a huge boulder. He looked at Gray and spoke with a slightly mocking tone. It was a man dressed in black. His face was rather old, like mottled tree bark. His entire body was black, and he wore a black night suit with a black cloak on the outside. He also wore a pair of black metal claws on his hands. Gray looked at the man who had appeared with a surprised expression and called out his name. "It's you, King of Assassins Theodore." This man was the culprit who had almost wiped out the Sydney family, King of Assassins Theodore. The reason he appeared here was self-evident. He must have noticed that Liu Shang had left the Purple Moon Kingdom's team and followed him all the way here to assassinate him. How disappointing. I thought you had made some shocking discovery. I didn't expect that you were just looking for a gem dire beast. King of Assassins Theodore's face was full of disappointment. He had already tracked down Gray a few days ago, but when he found that Gray seemed to be looking for something, he gave up on the idea of immediately assassinating Gray. Instead, he followed him all the way, wanting to see what Gray was looking for. But to his disappointment, Gray was actually looking for a gem dire beast. This greatly disappointed him, so he no longer hid and took the initiative to show himself, deciding to attack Gray here. Now that the Flame Kingdom is cooperating with our three kingdoms, the Flame Kingdom actually sent you to attack me at this time? Gray raised his eyebrows. The cooperation is limited to cracking runic mechanisms, nothing else. King of Assassins Theodore sneered. As he spoke, King of Assassins Theodore suddenly attacked. Whoosh! A huge cyan tornado, like a giant cyan pillar that reached the heavens, moved quickly and attacked Gray. Large amounts of earth and stone were sucked into it and instantly shattered. Everywhere it passed, a bare mark was left on the ground, and even a layer of soil was shaved off. Gray's expression turned serious, and he pulled out the silver sword-shaped weapon at his waist. Whoosh! Black mist crazily wrapped around the sword, and then a huge black tornado appeared, like a deep black hole, carrying a terrifying aura of destruction as it struck out. Rumble! The green tornado and black tornado collided, and then both exploded. The terrifying power spread out, and traces of cracks appeared on the ground. The entire mountain shook violently, as if it was about to collapse. Large amounts of earth and stone splattered, and a flock of birds flying in the sky were directly smashed by the earth and stone, turning into a bloody pulp, dripping a large pool of blood. Your battle strength, King of Assassins Theodore's face was no longer relaxed, and there was a slight hint of seriousness. At first, he felt relaxed because he thought that with his second stage king-level strength, it would not be too difficult to kill someone who was not a king level, but who had reached the king level through his ability to control corpses. But now, it seemed that Gray's greatest strength was not his ability to control corpses, but his own ability to control blood fiends. He could not help but feel that he was vaguely out of control. Gray was not surprised that he blocked the King of Assassins' attack with one blow. Now, the power of his three mixed abilities had reached second stage king level, and King of Assassins Theodore's realm was a first stage king level powerhouse, so it was natural that he could block the attack. He looked at King of Assassins Theodore and said, "Just like how you want to kill me, I want to kill you too. You want to kill me?" King of Assassins Theodore frowned. He did not remember having any grudges with Gray. Of course, this assassination did not count. The dead members of the Sydney family want me to collect their debt on their behalf. Gray smiled slightly. The purple ring moved, and the King Beast and Demonic Sound King Beast appeared. Whoosh! The two blood fiends quickly pounced on King of Assassins Theodore, while Gray compressed the black mist on his longsword into a huge black blade that slashed at King of Assassins Theodore. Swish! Swish! The King of Assassins waved the claws on his left and right hands. Suddenly, two huge green wind blades slashed out to meet the black giant blade. Crack! The huge black blade and the two green wind blades shattered, and the fragments flew in all directions, causing huge cracks to appear on the ground. What's your relationship with the Sidney family? King of Assassins Theodore's voice was gloomy. King of Assassins Theodore naturally did not forget the Sidney family. After all, because of the Sidney family, he was hunted down by the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom and was forced to seek refuge with the Flame Kingdom. Guess for yourself. Gray sneered. At this time, the King Beast and Demonic Sound King Beast were already close to King of Assassins Theodore. The King Beast's peak first tier speed burst forth, and it pounced on King of Assassins Theodore, its sharp claws swiping at Theodore. The Demonic Sound King Beast roared, and a formless sound wave attacked King of Assassins Theodore. King of Assassins Theodore snorted, and the claws on his hands clawed forward. Suddenly, a large number of wind blades appeared. The formless sound wave was shattered by the wind blades, and the King Beast and Demonic Sound King Beast were also sent flying by the wind blades. Flowers of blood bloomed on the King Beast's body, but the Demonic Sound King Beast surprisingly did not have any wounds. Its strong defense after metallization actually made it difficult for second-tier King-tier attacks to damage. At this time, a huge black tornado approached, attacking King of Assassins Theodore like a huge black hole. With the King Beast and Demonic Sound King Beast temporarily holding back King of Assassins Theodore, Gray brazenly attacked King of Assassins Theodore. Chapter 537. Whoosh! Seeing the black tornado approaching, Theodore's expression hardened. He couldn't stop it in time. His second-tier King's speed burst forth, and his body turned into a black shadow as he dashed away. Puffed. Scratches appeared on Theodore's body. Although he'd avoided the center of the black tornado, he was still hit by its edges. His clothes were made from king-level blood fiend's fur, but they were still damaged by the destructive power of a second-tier king. You actually hurt me. Theodore's expression was gloomy. He'd come to assassinate Gray, but he'd been the first to be injured by Gray's attack. On the other hand, Gray wasn't hurt at all. This was an insult to him. What? You're the only one allowed to kill me, but I can't hurt you? Gray sneered, and the huge black tornado formed again on the sword. It left the sword and swept towards Theodore, the King of Assassins. Rumble. King of Assassins Theodore's face was gloomy. A huge green tornado appeared and blocked the black fog tornado, causing the mountain to shake violently again. You really think I can't do anything to you? The King of Assassins, Theodore, stared at Gray and said coldly. The next moment his speed exploded. His body turned into a black shadow as he pounced on Gray. As someone who'd lived for nearly 300 years, he had a wealth of combat experience. Although he was furious, he quickly discovered Gray's weakness. It was speed. Based on the information he'd received, the black fog was an ability formed from multiple bloodlines. It allowed one to fight above their level. This meant that Leyland was definitely not a second-tier king. In addition, he couldn't feel any pressure from Leyland. He was almost 90% sure that Leyland wasn't a king yet. Leyland wasn't a king, but his combat ability was comparable to his second-tier king. Even he couldn't help but be jealous. This was Leyland's weakness. How fast could Leyland be if he wasn't a king? As long as he got close, Leyland wouldn't be able to retaliate. Woo! The Demonic Note King Beast and King Claw Beast charged at King of Assassins Theodore. One Demonic Note King Beast roared, while the other quickly closed in on Theodore, preparing to engage in close combat. They prevented King of Assassins Theodore from approaching Gray. Speed was indeed Gray's weakness. Although it wasn't as bad as Theodore thought, Gray's speed was only that of a normal king. He wasn't as fast as Theodore, so he commanded the Demonic Note King Beast and King Claw Beast to stop him. Scram! King of Assassins Theodore waved his claws, and a large number of wind blades instantly sent the Demonic Note King Beast and King Claw Beast flying. Then, he pounced towards Gray. Woo-woo. Following closely behind the King Claw Beast and the demonic Note King Beast, a huge black tornado blocked Theodore's path. However, Theodore, who was prepared, quickly dodged and avoided the black tornadoes. Woo-woo-woo-woo-woo-woo. Black tornadoes were sent out by Gray to stop King of Assassins Theodore, but Theodore either dodged them or blocked them with a huge green tornado. No need to struggle. Seeing Gray trying his best to stop him from approaching, King of Assassins Theodore sneered. Whoosh, whoosh. After dodging the huge black tornadoes several times, he was less than 100 meters away from Gray. The distance was less than 100 meters. With his speed, he could reach Gray in the blink of an eye. Whoosh. His body turned into a black shadow as he pounced towards Gray. Whoosh. Gray swung his sword horizontally in the direction he came from. A stream of compressed black mist turned into a giant black blade and slashed horizontally at him. But just as the huge black blade was about to hit him, his body flashed and dodged it. He circled behind Gray and approached Gray from behind. Whoosh, whoosh. Above the claws of his left and right hands, a green wind blade extended out, like two huge machetes slashing towards Gray's back. Gray reacted in time. Black mist wrapped around his long sword and turned it into a huge black sword. He turned around and blocked the two green wind blades. Boom! A terrifying collision occurred. Cracks appeared on the ground around them one after another. Each of the cracks extended to several hundred meters away in an exaggerated manner. It was like an abyss that was about to devour a person. Pa! 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 Gray staggered back, leaving messy footprints on the ground. Hastily blocking, coupled with the fact that his strength was only at the level of a normal king, he was still a little weaker than King of Assassins Theodore, who had reached the second stage of King of Assassins. He suffered a small loss. Whoosh! King of Assassins Theodore chased after him, the green wind blades on his claws slashing towards Gray again. Boom! Gray blocked the cyan wind blade from one of the claw fists, but the cyan wind blade from the other claw struck his abdomen. Pooh! Blood bloomed from Gray's abdomen as he flew backwards, leaving a long trail on the ground. Many rocks along the way were smashed to pieces. That's all you've got. Theodore raised an eyebrow at the success of his attack. Under his claw, the clothes on Gray's abdomen had been torn apart, and a wound had appeared on his abdomen. However, not much blood flowed out from this wound. Although the skin had been cut open, not much blood had entered the flesh. It could only be considered a light wound. What a strong defense! He knew that Gray had a strong defense. However, according to the information, Gray's defense was only as strong as a Desolate Gray defense. He hadn't expected Tang Wulin's defense to be so strong. Even against a second-stage Desolate Gray attack, Tang Wulin had only suffered a light wound. Clang! Gray didn't suffer any serious injuries. He pushed away the rocks on his body and got up. Fortunately, he had reached the third stage of the Desolate Grade, greatly increasing his defense. That was why he had been able to withstand Theodore's attack with a light wound. Apart from my defense, I'm at a disadvantage in terms of speed and strength. I'm at a disadvantage in close combat. It wasn't hard to tell from the exchange just now that he was at a disadvantage in terms of speed and strength. He was at a disadvantage in close combat with King of Assassins Theodore. But the troublesome thing was that King of Assassins Theodore was extremely fast. If he wanted to get close to him, it would be difficult for him to stop him. At this moment, the King Claw Beast and Demonic Sonar King Beast, who had been sent flying by Theodore's attack, climbed back up and appeared in front of Tang Wulin. Seeing the King Claw Beast, Tang Wulin had an idea. Summoning the two blood beasts closer, Gray climbed onto the King Claw Beast body and stood on top of it. Whoosh! King of Assassins Theodore pounced again. Gray slashed out with his sword, and the black mist formed a vortex that attacked King of Assassins Theodore. Meanwhile, the demonic Sonar King Beast roared and attacked King of Assassins Theodore. Poof! Theodore moved quickly and dodged the black mist vortex. Then, the green wind blades on his claws gently slashed out, blocking the formless sound waves. Following that, he quickly approached Gray and closed the distance between him and Gray. Whoosh! Standing on the King Claw beast, Gray once again sent a black tornado at the rapidly approaching King of Assassins Theodore. At the same time, he commanded the demonic sonar King Beast to attack King of Assassins Theodore with its demonic sonar. The King of Assassins, Theodore, sneered and dodged the black tornado again. One of the claws struck down, and a large number of wind blades shot out. Clang! 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 The demonic sonar shattered, and the demonic sonar King Bee's body emitted continuous sounds of metal colliding. Although the demonic sonar King Beast was not injured at all, it could not help but be forced back by the wind blades. At this moment, Theodore was less than 100 meters away from Gray. He coldly stared at Gray. The next moment, he turned into a black phantom and pounced at Gray. Gray slashed out a black fog, which turned into a wave of fog. It rolled and swept towards Theodore, the King of Assassins. However, the King of Assassins, Theodore, stepped through the air and flashed into the air, dodging the black fog waves as he closed in on Gray without slowing down. The two claws slashed down. The wind blades on the claws were several meters long and emitted an extremely sharp aura. Before they even got close, the wind blades slashed on Gray's body like knives. At this moment, the King Claw beast under Gray's feet moved. It abruptly moved to the side and quickly moved dozens of meters to the side, dodging the two wind blades. Pooh! Pooh! The two wind blades struck the ground, and immediately, two deep cracks appeared on the ground, extending to an extremely far distance. At this critical moment, Gray commanded the King Claw beast to move and dodge Theodore's attack. The King Claw beast was a king-level blood fiend that specialized in speed and strength. Its speed and strength had reached the peak of first-stage king level. Although it was only a first-stage king-level blood fiend, its speed was comparable to a second-stage king-level blood fiend. It was this speed that helped Gray dodge Theodore's attack. Whoosh! After dodging King of Assassins Theodore's attack, Gray slashed out with his long sword, and a compressed black mist slashed towards King of Assassins Theodore like a giant blade. Pooh! The black mist giant blade left a long and deep crack on the ground, but it didn't hurt the King of Assassins, Theodore. Whoosh! Theodore's speed exploded as he dodged the slash. Two giant wind blades slashed at Gray and the King Claw beast. The King Claw beast's speed exploded as it dodged the wind blades. On top of the King Claw beast, Gray once again slashed at Theodore with a black mist wave. Pooh! 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 In a few short moments, the combination of Gray and the King Claw beast was extremely close to Theodore, constantly attacking and dodging. Under their attacks, the ground around them was left with deep cracks one after another. However, both sides were able to dodge the attacks with astonishing speed and were not injured. Chapter 538. Boom! The black fog collided with the green wind blade. Gray and the King Claw beast were forced to retreat, and so was Theodore. You can actually contend against me now. Theodore, the King of Assassins, looked at Gray and the King Claw beast with a gloomy expression. Gray's attack was powerful, but his speed was average. The King Claw beast was extremely fast, but its attack was average. When the two worked together, they immediately displayed a stronger combat power than the other two. They were actually able to contend against him in close combat for the time being. I didn't expect to have such an unexpected effect after working with the King Claw beast. Gray was slightly surprised. Working with the King Claw beast was just a flash of inspiration, but it had such an unexpected effect. It was truly beyond his expectations. All this time, he had mainly controlled the blood fiends by commanding them from a distance. He had never worked with them in a battle like this before. This flash of inspiration allowed him to see a new way of fighting, using the blood fiends as mounts and complementing the blood fiends' abilities. In fact, he had the ability to control corpses, so he had the unique ability to work with blood fiends. Although some clans with deep foundations possessed blood fiends, it was extremely difficult for them to command the blood fiends as though they were part of their own body. Only after many years of mutual cooperation would they be able to do so. However, Gray was different. With the ability to control corpses, he had absolute control over the Blood Fiends. He could make the Blood Fiends act according to his wishes. Their tacit understanding had reached the highest level from the beginning. I really have to thank you properly. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Standing on the king claw beast, Gray slashed out with his sword. The black fog condensed into a huge black blade that slashed towards Theodore. Theodore waved his claws forward, and two huge wind blades slashed out, colliding with the black blade. Boom! The terrifying explosion caused rocks to fly everywhere, and cracks appeared on the ground. Gray and Theodore could not help but be pushed back by the aftershock of the explosion. At this moment, woo! A roar came from behind King of Assassins Theodore and directly attacked him. Under Gray's control, the demonic Sonar King beast stealthily approached King of Assassins Theodore from behind. Seizing the moment when Gray and King of Assassins were exchanging blows, it attacked Theodore. Puff, puff! King of Assassins Theodore couldn't help but stagger under the invisible shockwave. His black clothes became tattered, and his body was riddled with wounds that looked like they had been cut by a sharp blade. Traces of blood seeped out from the wound, leaving dark red spots on his body. After being injured again, the King of Assassins' face became even gloomier. Although the blood technique he cultivated was not a defensive blood technique, he had already reached level 2 of the King level. Under the demonic Sound King Beast level 1 attack, he was not seriously injured, but he was still injured. This made him extremely angry. He was trying to assassinate a blood warrior who was not even king level, but he was injured twice in a row. He swung his fist and claw behind him, and a huge green wind blade slashed at the demonic Sound King Beast. The demonic Sound King Beast was sent flying. He then looked at Gray and the King Claw Beast with a murderous look in his eyes. Even if I have to pay the price today, I will kill you. He gritted his teeth and seemed to have made a decision. Then, he saw a green tornado quickly forming in front of him. It was different from the cyan tornadoes they had seen before. The color of the tornadoes this time was obviously deeper, showing a greenish-black color. The greenish-black tornado kept expanding, and it quickly expanded to the size it was when he fought Gray. However, it did not stop there, and its size was still expanding. It doubled in size, tripled in size. After expanding to several times its previous size, the tornado stopped expanding. Rumble. At this moment, the tornado emitted a thunderous sound. It was as if it was wrapped in lightning. The aura it emitted became extremely dangerous. Even Gray, who had a strong defense, could not help but feel his heart palpitate. Its power has increased by so much. He has used a blood skill. Gray's expression was grave. It was obvious that his opponent had used a blood skill to enhance the Blood Fiend's ability, and its combat power was far beyond its usual level. Rumble. The huge greenish-black tornado began to collide with Gray and the King Claw Beast. It covered the sky and covered the sun, engulfing everything in its path. Rocks, trees, soil. Everything that was engulfed in it was immediately crushed. Even the clouds in the sky were pulverized. It carried a destructive aura as it attacked Gray and the King Claw Beast. Although it was extremely huge, its speed was extremely terrifying, and Gray felt that it was unavoidable. This was not an illusion, but a fact. With the enhancement of the Blood Fiend's ability, the power of this attack had probably exceeded level 2 King level and reached level 3 King level. The speed of an attack that had reached level 3 King level was naturally terrifying. After all, this was a level 3 King level combat skill, and it was aimed at level 3 King level existences. If the speed was too slow, a level 3 King level expert could easily dodge it. Rumble. Everything happened in an instant. In the blink of an eye, the greenish-black tornado had engulfed Gray and the King Claw Beast, engulfing them in endless wind blades. Ha! Cough, cough. Seeing this, the King of Assassins wanted to laugh out loud, but he could not help but cough up a mouthful of blood. The 4 great kingdoms did not have a complete blood skill, so naturally, the one he had was not a complete one. This blood skill was given to him by the royal family of the Flame Kingdom after he joined the Flame Kingdom. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he was not willing to use the blood skill. This was because the price to pay for using such an incomplete blood skill was too high, especially for someone like him who did not have much time left. It could be said that every time he used the blood skill, his lifespan would be reduced by a few years. For someone like him who did not have much time left, this was almost killing him. Grey Fergus's potential is greater than the royal family expected. In order to kill him, I have wasted a few years of my lifespan. The royal family must compensate me. Grey Fergus's combat power and potential were beyond his expectations, and also beyond the expectations of the Flame Kingdom. He knew that if Grey Fergus continued to grow, it would be a disaster for him and the Flame Kingdom. Therefore, he resolutely decided to sacrifice a few years of his lifespan to kill Grey Fergus. The only fortunate thing was that if the royal family knew of Grey Fergus' true potential, they would compensate him. Not only would they compensate him for the lost lifespan, but they would also give him additional lifespan. I don't know if there will be a corpse left. I'm sure the potion masters of the royal family will be very interested in such a corpse. The gigantic greenish-black tornado gradually dissipated, and King of Assassins Theodore looked at the center of the tornado with a relaxed mood. The might of the gigantic greenish-black tornado was terrifying. Almost half of the entire mountain had been sliced off. A few more attacks like this would be enough to destroy the entire mountain. What? Suddenly, his expression became sluggish. His eyes stared in disbelief at the place where the greenish-black tornado had disappeared. After the greenish-black tornado disappeared, a black tornado appeared in its place. It seemed to be made of solid black mist. As it spun, it looked like a real cylindrical wall. Asterisk crack. Asterisk the black mist whirlpool dissipated, revealing two figures. It was a man and a beast. The beast was a king-claw beast, while the man was gray. However, at this moment, Gray's body had clearly grown taller, reaching over 2 meters in height. The clothes on his upper body had been completely shredded, revealing a sturdy and well-proportioned body. You actually didn't die? The King of Assassins, Theodore, stared at Gray in shock. He couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. Unknowingly, cold sweat began to drip down his forehead and back. He could sense that Gray was extremely dangerous right now. The feeling of danger was like a dagger stabbing into his back. As a king who had lived for nearly 300 years, he actually felt fear when facing a young man in his 20s. You even used a blood skill. Looks like the only person the Flame Kingdom sent this time is you. Gray looked coldly at King of Assassins Theodore as he spoke. King of Assassins Theodore had a blood skill, so naturally Gray had one as well. Moreover, his bloodstain was complete, so the cost of using it was not as great as using an incomplete blood skill. However, he didn't use it immediately because he had been on guard. He was worried that King of Assassins Theodore wasn't the only person the Flame Kingdom had sent. He was afraid that if he used his blood skill, someone would take advantage of his weakness after using it to assassinate him. However, now that King of Assassins Theodore had used his blood skill, no one had appeared. He was certain that no one was hiding in the dark. You also have a blood skill. Without any hesitation, King of Assassins turned and fled. His speed exploded, and his entire body was like a black afterimage. He was heavily injured after using an incomplete blood skill. Moreover, Gray seemed to have a blood skill as well, and the cost wasn't as great as his. He had no intention of continuing the fight. He didn't think that Gray had a complete blood skill, because no faction in the Four Kingdoms had a complete blood skill. He didn't think that Gray could do it either. Humph. Looking at the King of Assassins who was fleeing quickly, Gray snorted coldly and swung his sword. The black fog appeared. Under the enhancement of blood skill Berserk, its power became extremely terrifying. Wave after wave of black fog surged out like an ocean. TCH. Almost instantly, he caught up with King of Assassins Theodore and dragged him into the battle. The King of Assassins, Theodore, was like a person who had fallen into water. He used both his ability and physical strength to struggle, but it was futile. Large chunks of flesh and blood were disappearing from his body, and in some places, even his bones were exposed. Chapter 539. Chi-Chi. The terrifying black ocean had a strong, crushing ability. Everything that came into contact with it was quickly crushed. Rocks, soil, trees, and even the gemstones buried deep in the mountains were all crushed by the black ocean's power. The king of assassins struggled in the black ocean. Streaks of wind blades slashed at the black ocean around him, trying to tear it apart and escape. Unfortunately, the wind blades dissipated as soon as they came into contact with the black ocean. When the black ocean disappeared, the entire stone mountain was once again sliced in half. The mountain was filled with huge cracks that went all the way to the roots. It looked as if the entire mountain would collapse at any time. The king of assassins, Theodore, was lying in a huge crater. His body was a bloody mess, and bones could be seen in some places. His slightly rising chest indicated that he was not dead. However, he should not be far from death in his current state. Gray deactivated Fury. His body instantly felt weak, and his head even turned a little black. It took him a while to recover. Although the cost of a complete blood skill was not as great as an incomplete one, it was not without cost. One of the costs was the loss of a large amount of blood power. Other than that, there were side effects such as dizziness. After all, he had used a power that exceeded his own level. Although he could perfectly control the sudden increase in power because he had mastered a complete blood skill and would not be severely injured, there would still be some side effects to his body. Of course, these side effects could be alleviated with a short rest. Gray was worried that someone would take advantage of this gap to attack him. His reaction would be slow in the dizziness. He might not even have time to use the purple ring's spatial teleportation. That was why he had not used his blood skill against the king of assassins, Theodore. Gray drove the king of claw beasts toward the king of assassins, Theodore. Hearing the footsteps of the king of claw beasts, the king of assassins rolled his eyes and raised his head with difficulty to look at Gray. I, Theodore, have lived for close to 300 years. I didn't expect to die at the hands of a 20-year-old kid like you. From the moment you made a move against the Sydney family, this day was already set in stone. Gray said indifferently. He was indebted to the Sydney family. When the Sydney family was in trouble, it was impossible for him to be indifferent. Therefore, from the moment the king of assassins attacked the Sydney family, it was destined that they would stand on the opposite side of him and become his target. What is your relationship with the Sydney family? Theodore, the king of assassins, asked with blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. My family is a nobleman of the Sydney family. Gray said, Enfeft nobles. Ha! Enfeoffment of nobility, cough cough. Theodore, the king of assassins, coughed up blood violently due to his agitation. He felt that he had been fooled by fate, as if an invisible hand of fate was toying with him. He had easily wiped out the Sydney family, but in the end, he had died at the hands of the nobles of the Sydney family. How ridiculous was that? I know that after I die, you will definitely use the ability to control corpses on me, but I won't let you do as you wish. Staring at Gray, the king of assassins flashed a sinister smile. Then he used all the strength in his body and suddenly raised the claw on his right hand, stabbing it at his own head. Asterisk puff. Asterisk before Gray could stop him. The sharp blade of the claw had already pierced Theodore's head. The sinister smile on Theodore's face stiffened, and he died completely. Blood and brain tissue flowed out of his head. You're pretty smart. Consider yourself lucky. Gray snorted coldly as he looked at Theodore's blood and brain tissue flowing all over the ground. After all, the opponent was a second-stage, king-level fighter. Even if he was heavily injured, Gray could not stop him from harming himself. He could only let him have his way. He jumped down from the King of Claw and began to count the spoils of war. The first thing that stood out the most was the King of Assassins' pair of claws. After removing them from the King of Assassins' hands and washing them with water, Gray sized them up. This was a set of black claws made of a type of black metal. After being activated, a faint green pattern appeared on the surface, emitting a horrifying and dangerous aura. This was a very special set of silver weapons. Only when the two claws were put together could they be considered a complete silver weapon. Separately, the amplification of the Blood Fiend's abilities was higher than a pinnacle bronze magic weapon, but not as good as a silver weapon. Gray himself could not use this set of claws. If he forced himself to use it, it would only make his battles very difficult. After all, he had always used a sword. However, this did not mean that this set of claws was useless. He could exchange it with someone else, or even give it to someone else. After storing this set of claws into his purple ring, Gray searched the King of Assassins' body. Finally, he found the King of Assassins' runic portal bag at his waist. After taking off the rune portal bag, Gray looked at it and was immediately disappointed. It actually broke. There was a hole in the King of Assassins' runic portal bag. The space that should have existed in the damaged portal bag had disappeared, and the items inside were also gone. It was unknown whether the items had disappeared along with the space or had been destroyed by the Blood Fiend's abilities after falling out. This type of portal bag was usually made of the leather of a king-level Blood Fiend. Because of this, it was extremely rare. However, it was a pity that Gray's battle power had exceeded that of an ordinary king-level Blood Fiend's. Even a portal bag made of king-level Blood Fiend's leather could not help but shatter. Forget it. Anyway, the most precious item is already in my hands. What comforted Gray was that to a king-level powerhouse, the most precious item was the silver weapon in their hands, which was the pair of claws just now. Although the other items were extremely valuable to ordinary people, to people like Gray and the others, their value was only average. Losing them would not be a heartache. Using an independent portal bag to store the King of Assassins' body, Gray planned to return to the Purple Moon Kingdom and hand it over to Zaloyan and his siblings to deal with. Gray wanted to find the Gemstone King beast, but he only found one. He was a little dissatisfied, so he did not immediately return to the graveyard. Instead, he continued to search this area that was rich in gemstones. Although the assassination attempt by the King of Assassins made him a little worried about his own safety, he had already stored the King of Assassins' body. The Flame Kingdom should not be able to find out that the King of Assassins was dead in a short period of time. They should not send another king-level powerhouse to assassinate him. Moreover, with the portal, he could escape through the portal if he was no match for the enemy. The danger was not as great as he imagined, so he decided to stay and continue searching for the Gemstone King beast. A week later, these are the traces of gemstone beasts excavating the gemstone mine. On a short mountain that was a few hundred meters tall, Gray found the traces of excavation again. There were hoof prints at the scene, indicating that these were the traces of a blood beast excavating. The reason why Gray was able to determine that this was a mark left behind by a gemstone beast-ranked blood beast was because the hoof prints of gemstone beast-ranked blood 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 beast had the same appearance. No, this hoof print, after careful observation, Gray could not help but shake his head. He gave up on searching for the traces of this gemstone beast-ranked blood beast. The hoofprint was smaller than the previous ones. It was obviously not left behind by the Gemstone King beast. If he was not wrong, it should be the hoofprint of a gemstone savage beast. A gemstone savage beast was naturally not Gray's target, so Gray gave up on searching for the traces of this gemstone beast-ranked blood beast. 2 weeks later, Gray found the hoof prints of another gemstone beast-ranked blood beast by the riverside. These hoof prints seemed to be bigger than the ones of the gemstone beasts. Could be a gemstone king beast. Glancing at the hoof prints left by the riverside, Gray could not help but perk up. Judging by his eyes, these hoof prints were obviously bigger than the ones of the gemstone beasts he had first discovered. These are indeed the hoof prints of a gemstone king beast. Gray took out the corpse of the gemstone beast from the purple ring and pressed down a footprint. He compared it and found that these hoof prints left by the riverside were indeed bigger than the ones of the gemstone beasts. He began to track and search with the river as the center. A few days later, he found these hoof prints again. He continued to track, and a few more days passed. In these few days, he found many more of these hoof prints. These hoof prints are very clear. This should have been left just a few days ago. Many more hoof prints were found. Seeing these hoof prints, Gray could not help but feel happy. These hoof prints were left just a few days ago. Since they were left just a few days ago, it meant that there was a high possibility that there were still traces of the scent left. He had a way to track the scent. After all, he still had 2 bottles of Hunter's Potion. There really are traces of the scent left. After drinking a bottle of Hunter's Potion, Gray's sense of smell increased tremendously. He immediately sensed the scent of a blood beast in the surroundings. Although it was very faint, he could still smell it. He was almost certain that this was the scent left behind by a gemstone king beast. Although the scent was very faint, it had a strong deterrent effect. It had a deterrent effect on low-level blood beasts, so it was obviously left behind by a high-level blood beast. Following the scent, Gray quickly chased after it. A few hours later, he found a blood beast covered in colorful scales at the side of a mountain. It's a gemstone king beast. Without hiding, Gray quickly approached. After all, with his current strength, a normal king beast would not be a threat to him. Roar! Gray, who didn't bother to hide his tracks, immediately alerted the blood fiend. The blood fiend stood up and roared. Facing the blood beast's roar, Gray ignored it and carefully sized it up. This was indeed a blood beast that was larger than the gemstone beast, and its appearance was very similar to the gemstone beast. The only difference was that on the surface of its body, there were some natural patterns that were different from the gemstone beasts. Gray was almost 90% sure that this was a gemstone king beast.